I'd like to call tonight's governing body meeting to order. We will start off with a pledge of allegiance led by Councillor Fagali, a salute to the New Mexico flag led by Councillor Barrett, and an invocation of remembrances led by Councillor Garcia. Please stand as you are able. Allegiance to the flag.
I'd like to just take a moment to call to mind many of the issues that we have amongst us in our own communities, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's people struggling, and those that do have that, are part of our society. I'd like to call to mind things that happen in our state, our nation, and around the world. That we somehow find a way to come together and agree to disagree, but always come to the table with an open mind and open heart and the ability to have discussion. Dios nos guíe por buen camino, nos líbrenos de todo mal, concebida sin mancha, sin pecado original. Amen.
Are there any remembrances from governing body members? Seeing none, let's take a moment to keep those that are in need and in help in our thoughts tonight as we work on behalf of the community. Thank you, everybody. Madam City Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Certainly, Mayor. Councillor Barrett? Here. Councillor Bustamante?
Here.
Councillor Cassett?
Here.
Councillor Castro?
Presente.
Councillor Fagali?
Here.
Councillor Garcia?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, Mayor Garcia.
present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
And just for the record, Councillor Faulkner and Councillor Chavez are excused.
Thank you.
Next up is approval of tonight's agenda. Any changes from staff?
Yes, Mayor. Item 9R caption says approval of amendment 2, but it should be approval of amendment number 1. The memo and the packet material reflect that it's amendment number 1.
Okay, and just a quick confirmation with city attorney. Is that okay, or do we need to postpone?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Members of the governing body. The city clerk and I discussed this earlier, and I believe that's sufficient because other information in the packet shows the change to amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any changes from governing body members? If not, what's the will of the body?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing seeing none, Madam City Clerk. Oh, no, everybody's here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is approval of the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk, were there items that were pulled?
Yes, Mayor. Items 9N, 9O, and 9P have been removed for discussion by Councillor Castro.
Okay, are there any additional items that governing body members would like to remove? If not, what's the will of the body?
To approve as amended.
Second.
Okay, all those, well, this one, we got to take a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes.
Councillor Bustamante?
Yes.
Councillor Cassett?
Yes.
Councillor Castro? Councillor Fagali?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, first up on the agenda is, or next item is presentations. Will you please read into the record what the presentation is, Madam City?
Yes, Mayor. 8A is council staffing study results by Baker Tilly. And here to present is Deputy City Manager Andrea Phillips.
Okay, Deputy City Manager, the floor is yours.
If we could get that up, it's in the packet. Or should I plug in here and do it? Michael, could you put the presentation on the screen for the council staffing study? Hey, sorry about that. Oh. Oh. It's actually. Let's get it.
See your.
Okay, appreciate your help, Michael. And while he's putting that up, I do want to introduce Annie Rose Favreau. She should be in the meeting room, and we'll go ahead and bring her in. Annie Rose is with Baker Tilly. So just a bit of background on this. Michael, do you need me to do something?
And good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure if you can hear me yet, but this is Annie Rose Favreau from Baker Tilly. I'm also happy to share my screen if that's a good option for sharing the presentation. Just let me know.
Yeah, this is actually. Presentation mode like this? Okay. All right. Thanks for the technical assistance. I appreciate you. Annie Rose, thanks for hanging in there. Maybe I can just give a little bit of background for a governing body here this evening. The council staffing study was initiated through a resolution that was approved by the governing body last year. It directed the city manager's office to engage a consultant to interview and study options for council support staffing. We sought quotes in the fall through a competitive process, and we received 3 proposals. We had Councilor Romero Worth at the time and Councilor Cassett help to choose who that firm would be to conduct the study. And we selected the firm of Baker Tilly, who we also work with in some other capacities. They were selected based on their experience and their comprehensiveness in the proposal. We budgeted about $60,000 for the study, and they came in around $50,000. The focus of the project was to interview both outgoing counselors and staff, as well as incoming electeds and staff. They also conducted some peer benchmarking that they'll go into, and then synthesize all of that information into recommendations. We are still digesting the recommendations. We have been talking with various entities within the city that would be impacted through the recommendations, like constituent services, special events, comms, policy and legislative office. And so there's still quite a bit of discussion I think we need to have internally in terms of what the recommendations mean. But we wanted to present those results and recommendations to you this evening. And just so you are aware, we did put a placeholder in the FY27 budget for $250,000 for council staffing or support. We weren't sure what exactly it was going to look like, but that is an option if you choose to move forward on this, and we can kind of discuss what that looks like. So With that, I will turn it over to you, Annie Rose. Hopefully you can see the screen. And if you want to go ahead, we can go ahead and present the results.
Thank you so much. I can see, well, actually, I could see the screen and now it has disappeared. I'm wondering if when I'm talking that screen will not be showing.
Okay, it's showing here, so I'll just move through
Great.
the slides.
All right, sounds good. If we could go to slide 2 on that agenda.
Okay.
For this afternoon, I would love to walk you through an overview of the project scope, get into that in a little bit more detail, share some commendations because some areas of this work are going very well, then talk a little bit about the different council support models that we recognized in terms of how staffing is set up and structured in other peer cities, peer jurisdictions, in order to make sure that council members have sufficient support to do their jobs. And then we'll get into some of our specific observations and recommendations for the city of Santa Fe and talk about some other considerations right at the end here. So a good amount to cover here. I'm going to keep rolling through this information, but please, since I don't have eyes in the room, please let me know if at any moment we need to pause for questions or clarifications. If you go to slide 3, though, on project scope, as was mentioned, the focus of this study was really to look at the counselor's support needs. What is actually needed? Where are staff currently supporting different areas and different functions? Evaluate the current staffing structure, and then identify those potential staffing models and recommendations that might make sense for the city of Santa Fe. On slide 4, we started this work actually way back in October, and there was a bit of a pause around the holidays for this, but this work really consisted of 4 major phases. We started with project planning, then we did a lot of fact-finding, information gathering, and analysis, and now we are at the reporting phase. For the interviews, we did interview council members, the mayor, as well as 10 members of city management and staff that intersect in various ways with this functional area. We also looked at a number of documents to understand how certain governance processes are working currently. And then finally, this was complemented by not only industry best practice research, but also peer benchmarking. So we conducted benchmarking around 10 cities where we wanted to understand, especially for cities of similar sizes or cities that are larger. So this list of peers includes both kind of current peers as well as some aspirational peers or peer cities where we heard that they had an interesting governing council support model set up. We selected those 10 that you see listed here and did outreach and information gathering about what their models look like as well. On the next slide, in terms of commendations, we very much would like to thank everybody who participated in this project, council members, city leadership, city staff. It was very, very useful, the feedback that we received through this process. And 2 things in particular.
Can you hold on 1 second? I
Oh, yeah.
apologize. The slide on our end is upside down.
Oh, how exciting.
Could you just read off what's on there? We don't, yeah, it's upside down. So
Yeah,
maybe you
I
could
can
just read off the slide.
Yep, absolutely. The 2 major pieces here that we wanted to highlight were that counselor and staff commitment to constituents and the community. That was a very, very clear piece that came forward through all of our interviews and conversations, that there is a real shared commitment saying we want our processes to be set up in such a way that it supports the community members, it supports the constituents that we are here to serve. And also, we certainly heard on the staff side and looking at some of the processes and efforts that have been made, especially in the past several years, there's a very clear commitment that the staff members want to make sure that council members are receiving sufficient support as well. There's a recognition that not all of those areas all those gaps are getting filled right now, and a clear commitment to making that work. So we really appreciate both of those items. If you go on to the next slide, slide 6, that says council support models, how are we doing in terms of whether that slide is right side up or upside down?
Okay, we're good.
Fantastic. All right. Well, in terms of the models, we want to ground everybody in this conversation in the primary council support models that are out there. So model A is the one-to-one support model, and that's essentially where you would see at least one full-time dedicated staff member assigned to support each council member. So each counselor has at least one dedicated staff member, if not more. And this structure obviously is highly responsive. There's you can get a lot of personalized support when you're working in a model like this. Obviously, though, it's the most expensive version of this model because it has the highest FTE needs to make sure that everybody has that one-to-one support. There's also less resource flexibility that happens here. So, for example, if one council member's support person is out on PTO, it is much more difficult to fill that gap. We typically see this model in fairly large cities and cities where council members have a really high amount of workload and time that they are expected to commit to these processes. Model B is, I believe, the most common, or at least in my experience, is the most common model that I have interacted with. And this is shared and centralized support. So basically, you have one team where you bring together a centralized group of staff members, and that team supports all of the council members. So there isn't the one-to-one relationship, but there is the sense that this team of folks is fully dedicated to supporting staff or to supporting counselors, excuse me, and that group would not have other priorities that they might be pulled into. The advantage of this is obviously that can be very collaborative to have that centralized staff. It can help ensure that service delivery to council members is fairly consistent and flexible. There's a lot more flexibility because you have multiple staff members included in that centralized team. But it is obviously less individualized support and does still require significant coordination across counselors to ensure that the resources are being used equitably. The last model is the decentralized support model, where there might be various staff in different departments across the city that support various aspects of work related to council member work. This can be really a very, very efficient use of resources. This obviously does not require any additional FTE outside of the roles that where they sit currently, and is fully integrated. It means that the staff who are supporting council members are integrated into the rest of the organization and can have a lot of collaboration there. But it can absolutely limit the amount of capacity that those staff members have to support council members and can reduce responsiveness to council priorities. So I know that was a lot, but I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page around when I'm using the terms model A, B, and C here. So then if you go to the next slide, I want to get into our observations and recommendations. And on slide 9, I talk about the current model. So model C, within Santa Fe, you are using this decentralized support model. And you can see on this table that there are a variety of roles that provide different levels of support that are coming from different areas within the city, different city departments and functions. The group that provides the most kind of high level of support to council members are the legislative and policy innovation manager and that policy research staff. And everybody else falls more into some version of medium or lower support. But as you can see, there are certainly staff members who dedicate their time to supporting counselor needs, but none of these roles are 100% full-time dedicated in that space. On slide 10, I talk about some of the issues with this current model. I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone here, but counselors, as part-time council members, there are sometimes very high workloads, and it can be difficult to have the capacity and all of the time you need to manage those workloads. And there were very commonly reported support needs that were outstanding right now and not yet being met around legislative research and planning. There could be additional support there. Constituent communications was frequently mentioned. Meeting preparation, scheduling, and event coordination was another area. So this really ranges from some of that more administrative support to constituent services and legislative and policy support as well. We also heard quite a bit about limited staff capacity, especially when staff are supporting all of the council members, as well as requests from other departments or other city leadership. That can be difficult to prioritize those requests. And right now, what we know is that there aren't enough staff resources to sufficiently address all. There are enough to address the priority requests, but not all of the requests that are coming in from council members. So that means that things are having to be prioritized and balanced. We also heard quite a bit about just role ambiguity, a lack of shared understanding about what is an appropriate level of counselor support. Which staff members can I go to for which things? Which staff members are authorized to decline requests if they come in or prioritize requests? Is that something happening at the staff level, at the council member level? How are different council members sharing these resources? And then obviously when there are formal processes set up and then folks are going around those processes, that can also create inconsistent service levels internally as well. So on slide 11, this is an overview of the peer approaches. When we were looking across at those 10 peers, 2 of the peers that we looked at do use the one-to-one support model, that model A. And in general, these were larger cities with very significant resources or full-time council members with high workloads. That's typically where we are seeing that model come into play. 4 of the peers use the shared and centralized support model. And from those groups, we heard quite a bit that there is a strength in that model in terms of collaboration and consistency, but that the challenge remains around competing counselor priorities and how much staff capacity can be given into that space. And then finally, model C, 4 of the peer cities use a decentralized model similar to the city of Santa Fe. And there, again, typically we were seeing that with when you don't have enough resources to fully staff a centralized team, we end up with a decentralized support model as well. On slide 12, recommendation. So where the city is at right now, what we're recommending is retaining your current support structure, but adding into it a centralized council program manager role. This role would sit within the city manager's office, and the primary focus of this role is improving coordination, consistency, decreasing workloads, and making sure that support is equitably distributed across the various council members. So core responsibilities here include obviously coordinating some of the administrative and operational support functions, supporting constituent engagement efforts, assisting with legislative coordination, and really helping all of the teams that currently support the council to coordinate with each other, do some of that process improvement work that will help ensure that these processes are flowing effectively, and really be the person who's keeping an eye out on this question of, are our council members getting the support that they need to do their jobs effectively? This is a model that we have seen in several other peers, and as part of this, we've also provided from at least one of those peers a potential job description for a role like this. On slide 13, we also wanted to talk about the recommendation on roles and responsibilities. And we think, especially if you're bringing in a new position like this is a perfect time to document some formal frameworks that clearly define the roles and responsibilities of city staff, what city staff are well prepared and set up to provide, what roles and responsibilities really fall within what individual council members are expected to provide through their work, and the standardization of workflows around these things. One of the things that we heard is, especially if you're coming in as either a new council member or a new staff member, there's very little documentation of what is expected in these spaces, and that can make it very difficult to understand what help help and support is even available. So having some type of clear documentation will be useful there. And then finally, in terms of other considerations, slide 14 and then into 15, we did want to flag that while this assessment was primarily looking at the staffing side of things, there were two process topics that came up really frequently during these conversations. The first was around the legislative research process. So right now, that process is not as transparent as it could be. It's not clear how different requests get prioritized, and there's very limited visibility into where research requests actually are. So we do think that right now, because of that lack of clarity and how that process is set up, it's creating inefficiencies effectively. So formalizing a process that establishes very clear prioritization criteria so that everyone can understand how these different requests are being treated. We would encourage as much as possible shared visibility across counselor requests as well within this. We think that obviously the council program manager could really support improvements in this process, but right now this is an area that is taking more time than we would expect to see for a process like this and is not necessarily aligned with what we're seeing in peer districts. In terms of the committee review process, this was another area that was brought up pretty frequently of noticing that oftentimes things need to be routed through multiple committee reviews, and that coordination can make things take longer than ideally they would and require more effort and workload. And so the recommendation here is to look at that committee review process to see if there's any opportunities to streamline that and improve the efficiency. We think that both of these areas are really contributing to high council member workloads, and so that's why these two are called out here. So that was a lot of me sharing information. So I will pause there and see if there are any questions.
Anything else to present, Deputy City Manager? If not, I'll go to the governing body.
I don't think so. Thank you. We're looking forward to your feedback.
Okay, any questions from the governing body? Councillor Cassett.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, both of you for your work and your presentation. Yeah, I mean, I have plenty of thoughts. I think that ideally a one-to-one would be great. You know, I think it is interesting, understanding what the workload of a counselor is. And I think it was Counselor Romero-Worth who told me once, you know, got to put on boundaries because this job will take as much time as you give it, which is true. So I think that's, but probably unrealistic given our budget. So one thing that I'm interested in here is that if we were to have this type of model, you know, we have $250,000 dedicated, which I think could potentially get us maybe 2 reasonably well-paid positions. And if there was maybe a council program manager and then, you know, maybe somebody who is more specific on one of our primary duty, what we're supposed to do is legislation. And then we know that there's a lot of challenges with the workload that in Marcy's team. And so I think that maybe that would be an interesting conversation. The question that I have though has to do with the type of governments that the peer models we're looking at, specifically those with the who did not have the one-to-one. And so one of the challenges we've been running into, and of course we have the charter review going, is this balance of powers between the legislative and the executive. And so do you have, you know, I see the cities, but what my question about them is, are they a council manager level of government, or are they a strong mayor because at this point you have, with this model, essentially the council support sitting in the city manager's office, which with the way that our current model works, which is a little wonky and we need to work on, is pretty tightly wound with the executive. So that was one of our one of the pieces about this, is how do we make sure that the council is getting some more of the balance that we would like to see. And I could see in a, you know, model depending on the mayor, this mayor's been a counselor, so I don't believe that he would do this, but I could see in another model where you have a city council program manager reporting to a city manager. In this strong mayor system, it kind of could potentially dilute the support of the council in that scenario. So I'm curious with the long-winded way to say, did you look at the structure of the governments of these peer cities?
Thank you so much for that question. I don't have that off the top of my head. I know that was a consideration when we were putting together the peer list, and I can certainly follow up with you specifically. But regardless of the structure, we don't tend to see a large difference regardless of the governing model in terms of council support. Usually, if it is a one-to-one measure, if it's model A, staff members report directly to the council member that they're supporting. And in model B and C, those almost exclusively fall within, or I suppose model B, fall within the city manager's office. That is by far and away the most common place for those to fall, again, regardless of governing structure. And then obviously model C is decentralized across the different departments.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, and if you could send over that information, I think it would just be interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, and maybe if I can just chime in, on page 30 in the document that's attached, it does have a table that references all of those peer cities, the type of staffing to counselor support ratio, if it's a full-time or part-time mayor, and the type of government. So strong mayor or council manager form.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you anticipating that's something that I would want. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was my one question. I will dig into this report a little bit more as well as we continue to pick through this. But when I'm really thinking about where am I struggling to keep up, I have two places, especially as, for me, I for a long time, I was giving this job a good 60 hours a week. My life has changed. My financial needs have changed. So, I am, working on a more part-time basis and a lot more empathy with my colleagues that have been working full-time jobs this entire time, because I really struggle with keeping up with my legislation, both just keeping my brain there, as well as I know that Marcy and her team are just getting influx from all of us, and then keeping up with constituent communications, whether those are, initial communications or simply follow-up, which we've talked about, some systems ways that we might be able to assist with that if we are sending things over to Javier and his team. We talked about that there now is, I believe, there is now a back way that we can enter into the CRM and see what we have entered in and be able to follow up and look at what's going on there. So, which wasn't the case for a while. So when I look at my two areas, that's where I'm finding a lot of challenges and could really use some additional support. And maybe if there are two positions available, we might be able to look at how those could potentially split the difference. And maybe it's a council manager, program manager, and then putting another team member in the legislative staff, because that's, again, when we talk about what is our primary role, it actually is not to the day-to-day operations. It's not following up to see if, Parks has put the swing up. In theory, that should be something that then switches over to day-to-day operations and into, the city manager's purview. And with a lot of our systems, it just hasn't. But legislation is absolutely, that's our bread and butter. So those are my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Castro.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy City Manager. And the presentation is very interesting. There's a lot of information. Agreed. I will get back to you. Some thoughts is that this potentially is a little bit dated. I know that we saw a lot of discussion about subcommittees and we've had extensive discussion amongst ourselves. I wonder how this could potentially be updated with some of the things like study sessions that we're thinking about. There is a lot of coordination that we needed initially coming into this new administration around events. And I think we saw with last night that we're getting a lot of that support right now. And so I wonder how some of those changes might affect the needs of the council. And I hate to say that we need to go back to the drawing board. We don't, but there are some things that potentially could be updated here. I also have a little bit of concern about or not concern, I think another direction we could go is that discussion of authority, because some of these needs could potentially be serviced by folks we already have, but we're not sure how to interact with them or what kind of authority we have. So I guess what I'm saying is I actually think we're in a better place than we were a few months ago. How can we use this to improve understanding that we have a limited budget? Thank you.
Counselor Fagali.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize to everyone for my voice today. It's doing weird things. But yeah, I guess I'm not sure how this is helpful, really. Like I'm not seeing any recommendations or anything new that I feel like we didn't know. So maybe I'm missing that, but yeah, and yeah, what am I missing?
Thank you, Counselor, for that. I think the main recommendations are this new position, the council program manager position, which would help coordinate with the various entities, constituent services, legislative office, et cetera, and try to help ensure that the needs and support is there for the counselor. So this would be a dedicated individual, perhaps two, potentially, who would interface with you all and provide that support. I think the other recommendations are more around systems. So kind of the discussions you've already been having around looking at the committee structure and are there some efficiencies there, or, you know, looking at the things that are creating the need or the feeling that counselors need more support, right? So let's look at our legislative process. Is there duplication there? Could we make it more visible to all of you through a tracking tool so that you're not having to spend so much time, you know, interfacing with Marcy's team, or she's not getting duplicate requests from 3 or 4 different counselors. So and maybe that's where study sessions could help kind of vet those policy discussions and maybe end up creating some efficiencies and some time savings, you know, down the road. So I think those were the kind of the main recommendations that came out of it. But, you know, frankly, I want to have more discussion with you all and with the pertinent staff that would be affected by this to really kind of digest these recommendations. Think about, to your point, Counselor Castro, like what does this mean for us if we were to implement something like this? Does it involve, you know, looking at our current systems? Is it new staffing? You know, how would we implement some of these recommendations?
Yeah, my concern is that I feel like our needs are super varied. Like some of it's legislation, some of it's can we get our parking passes, some of it's planning events, some of it's, you know, like it's sort of all over the place. And I think it also really varies by counselor what everyone wants. And I feel like having one person trying to balance that would be like us trying to balance our own things, which like they would just get overwhelmed and run away, which we would prefer not to have. Thanks.
Thank you,
If
Counselor.
I may have one follow-up on that too.
Yes.
Just to clarify, I think it's really important that the council, if you did move forward with the council support program position, that person would not be responsible for providing all of the support needed by each council member. They would provide some of that support, but really their function is on that coordination of making sure that all of the other staffing resources that are available are well aligned. Everybody understands the expectations, there are clear processes. So they would serve as the linchpin for these things, but we would not expect that individual to provide all support to everyone, because we would absolutely agree that that is an unsustainable position, and we would not recommend structuring it in that way.
Counselor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And I do see the challenges of doing something like this, having a specific individual per counselor. You know, I come to it from a fiscally minded individual that says, okay, how can you put one person to each counselor, you know, where we're already paid counselors? Yes, it's a part-time job, but it is full-time work too. Counselor Cassett's point. And to Counselor Pagali's point, I think it's different for each and every one of us. I'm not a huge proponent of increasing more individuals. I had an issue when we were introducing an assistant city manager's position, and says, why do we need that when we have a strong mayor? City managers, understanding your roles a little bit more. I think it would be something to get some input from our city managers, either previous, current, and maybe future. But it does seem to be issues, some of the major issues that I see sitting as a counselor is again that communication to the community. Our position as policymakers, how do we work with staff, in the legislative branch? And a lot of times you can't communicate that through an individual because it's your own thought process, it's your own mind. When you're dealing with the general public, how do you decipher what's the need of the public? When I first came on, it was send this straight to, at that time it was Daniel Diaz. I was talking to other counselors. Oh, just send it to Daniel. He'll take care of it. How do we keep track of things? It's not getting done. Okay. Down to the city manager. What's going on here? So, I mean, there's a huge, there's a big lift and a lot of work to do on this to see how you make it work. Just appropriating extra money and hiring people doesn't always fix the problem. It is our processes. It is how we work together, and it is how we become unified in a direction, given that we all have different ideologies. One of the things that I do see that is a challenge is again keeping track of the community, because we are policymakers, and yet we are the ones who field the calls directly from our constituency in each district. You're my counselor. Why aren't you taking care of it? And yet it falls on the administration in a way, because we have maybe sent the message out or put in a work order or things like that. And so where is that breakdown? Finding that breakdown in people and processes is really the biggest issue. And sure, I'd like to have somebody answer my calls and respond to my emails, but it also takes away that intimacy of what we have with the individuals that we represent. And so I think those are the major challenges. And going back to looking at our model, you take a look at the strong mayor format. Do we need 2 counselors per district? Look at the county, there's 1 in each district. They do have a personal assistant that helps them. There's a lot to this. So just a few of my thought processes as we were listening to the presentation, and also bringing it in from the private business mentality. Too many chefs in the kitchen doesn't always work. And so be careful how many irons you have in the fire. You can use adages over and over, but how do we get the job done at the end of the day, and how are we most efficient to the community who we represent? So just a few thoughts. Thank you.
Counselor Cassett.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just following up on Counselor Garcia and Counselor Castro's points around I think maybe the reason that we're all kind of sitting here is because there's this deeper recognition that the issue is structural and procedural at this point. And I think it's really hard to know what we need when we are working in structures and procedures that are inefficient. Their time sucks. I mean, when we just, we've been talking about our committee processes. If you have long agendas, it's quite a bit to actually prep for your committees. And so if you're talking about, we each serve on, or almost all of us serve on 2 council committees. We're serving on our, advisory committees. the first time that I see a quality of life agenda, it's a good couple hours for me to prep for it. Finance is going to be about 3 or 4 hours of me reading. Governing body, normally I've seen a lot of it, but it's still a few more hours, and I have to go back over the things that I saw and to make sure that I remember and I know what I'm voting on and that I'm prepared. And so, that's been one of our big conversations. How long the legislative process takes, how long contracts take, and what that means for staff time. And I think more and more I've been getting to this place of like, I think we kind of have to blow up our process a little bit, which is really, I think, kind of scary. But I also feel like this is another conversation where we're like, hey, something's just not quite working. And it's really hard to put our finger on it because I think it's a number of things that are moving. And I think to Councilor Garcia's point, aside from a direct one-to-one correlation, which is not financially feasible, I'm not certain how much more, staff added to kind of this combined model, given our current systems, would help. I think hopefully with the charter review, we will get some much better definitions around roles. To Councilor Garcia's point, it's like, well, that's, the administration, but is it, and how we deal with that transfer of information. Yeah, I'm struggling with this because I fail to see whether or not a counselor program manager would be very helpful. Honestly, what's more helpful, I feel like, for us and for our staff is like, if we're going to add on 2 more positions, put one in constituent services, put one in the legislative services. I mean, and that's, if we're not, I realize that it's not direct support to us at that point. But at least it helps with our 2 main functions that take up a lot of our time and maybe could have a counselor focused model. So I mean, I appreciate more conversation, but I think that it is tied to some of our really big conversations that we're having right now about our structure of government and our procedures and our legislative processes. And these are all really kind of mushed up together, and that's becoming both more clear and much more fuzzy as we have these conversations. Thank you.
Councilor Castro.
Sorry, thank you so much. I would just like to hear a little bit more out of the city manager's office around like the technical support that we're getting. For example, booking conferences, booking flights, and mail routes, things like that. Because I know that that's coming out of the city managers currently.
Thank you, Councilor Castro, and members of the governing body. Yes, so the executive assistant and Bernice Senna, who is our administrative assistant in the city manager's office, are there to help support with some of the things like booking travel or, making purchases or things like that. But I do think that's maybe an area, among others, where we could look at maybe role clarity and just ensure that everyone is aware of who's doing what. Because I think there is a little bit of, maybe a little bit of fogginess around, who's supporting whom and that kind of thing. And we want you all to be as successful as possible. We're all here as city staff to support all of you and to make sure that you are, supported, have the tools that you need. And we certainly want to make it as easy for you as possible. So I think, if there are opportunities for us to just further clarify those roles and responsibilities, which was another recommendation that kind of is a through line in this, is kind of addressing the ambiguity, right? And so I think that might be something we could talk about in a study session or some kind of future conversation, just to make sure we're all on the same page about that level of support and who's going to be, tasked with what.
Wonderful. And I imagine that this presentation and some of our concerns will be relayed to the Charter Review Commission that's currently talking about some of the separation of powers. Yes? Or balance of powers. I'm so sorry.
If I can just be
That's an
honest,
assumption.
I think that it's related, but also separate in a way, and that regardless of the Charter Review Commission, I think we still need to understand who's doing what. And knowing too that might be a year or so off before those recommendations come forward, and then there may or may not be changes based on that. So I think even in the meantime, just kind of trying to develop a path forward and a common understanding about the different levels of support and things that we want to provide to the council.
Thank you so very much. No further questions, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments, questions? Okay, is there I guess I got one quick question, follow-up next steps? Because I know, especially speaking from the counselor's perspective, y'all need some help. We want to make sure y'all get the help you need. And so I guess we can work one off with counselors to finally determine what that looks like, because we did allocate the money and we want to make sure that, folks are getting the best support possible. Counselor
I
Barrett.
didn't know after this if we could at another time soon take a deeper dive on this and like you said, like kind of flesh it out. What would it look like? What are the different options? And we could all go over it together to see what would be the most helpful for a majority of us. I don't know, just a thought.
All right, sounds like more to come. Thank you, Deputy City Manager Phillips. Next item on the agenda, Madam City Clerk.
Next item on the agenda is 9N. This is a request for approval of amendment number 4 to item 22-0303 with Condor New Age Logistics LLC for security guard services at city facilities to increase compensation by $2,200,000 for a new total amount of $8,800,000 and extend the term to June 30th, 2028. And here to present is Interim Public Works Director Sam Burnett.
Okay. Counselor Castro pulled this item. Did you need a presentation or just jump into questions?
So I did have a short conversation with Director Barnett. I don't know if you want to address some of those things. I can ask some questions. Generally, I think the scope of what we use security for in the city of Santa Fe is maybe not, I didn't understand as well as I did after the conversation. What do we use security for?
Mayor, Councilor Castro, the city uses security for a large number of things. For example, the tourism department uses security both at their facilities and in the downtown area. Our parking division uses it to help monitor parking lots and parking garages. Libraries use it for helping ensure the safety of frontline staff and patrons. The municipal court uses it for ensuring security during their operating hours. We use security in at Midtown Santa Fe, in the Santa Fe Rail Yard, and I believe there is also some security associated with both parks and open spaces and public utilities operations. So a really diverse number of areas throughout the city.
Thank you so much. And part of the reason I think that we're seeing such large amounts is also that these are caps, correct, Director Burnett? So we may not expend all of this money. Is that true?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor Castro, that's absolutely true. These contracts are on-call contracts. There is no guarantee of payment. And then based on the needs of those various departments or divisions that I've mentioned or any other inside of the city, based on available funding and need, those entities can use these contracts to open up purchase orders to cover specific scopes associated with what they need. So these contracts are intended to give us general bandwidth to meet our security needs throughout the city.
Wonderful. I think that that gives me much better clarity of what we're using security for in the city of Santa Fe. And of course, we don't want to understaff our municipal courts or any places that we need overnight. I do have some concern based on some discussion we had at Quality of Life, the level of service that we're receiving from some of our contractors. Do you want to address a little bit of the difficulties we've had? And now that we are fully staffed in the Santa Fe Police Department, how we could potentially work with PD to supplement some of the work that we need done by these security officers?
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Mayor, Councilor Castro. My experience with security firms goes back a number of years now, probably about 6 or 7. And in my experience, there is generally difficulties in fully staffing to meet all of the security needs that the city has. And we've tried working with different firms, like identifying a single firm and working with them. We eventually went to this new model where we have a number of contracts so we can use different vendors to try and fill those gaps. And what we've discovered is that I think just generally speaking, in the field of security, there's only so many people who are working as security guards, and it doesn't matter how you try and diversify, you're always going to kind of hit a bottleneck in staffing. And we definitely see that throughout our security portfolio, where we have either positions that remain unfilled or miss shifts, and it is a complicating factor. And I think that absolutely there is a worthwhile conversation to be had between Santa Fe PD and, maybe purchasing. Public Works would be happy to participate. I'm sure Director Randall would be happy to participate and try and figure out how we can best, use our multiple resources to make sure we're adequately covering our needs and, providing the best service we can to the public. What that looks like, I'm not sure, but I think it's a worthwhile conversation.
Thank you so much. So just in a general sense, I really want to make known that it would be more beneficial for us to have a little bit more internal support rather than, I think, in a general sense in the city, we're trying to move away from contracts and do things internally. This would be another opportunity. In the last 2 weeks that we've had more bike officer presence on the plaza, I've heard some really good things from a lot of the folks that initially wanted the security team. So just saying that it's working. I do have a little bit of concern about some of the discussion around the downtown security in particular. And I don't know if Director Randall wants to kind of come and speak to some of the comments that we saw at the New Mexican, for example, today.
Just to clarify, is this, I think the tourism bar is coming later. So
Sorry, and we can wait until the tourism bar. Sure. Yeah, we can wait for the next item if you'd like.
yeah, just that way we're not blending contracts because this
Sure.
contract's not dealing with downtown,
Sure.
correct? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, actually, this on-call contract does,
Go with-
this is the contract Randy would be using for that as well.
Okay, my apologies then, Mr. Randall.
No problem.
The floor is yours.
And sorry, Mr. Randall, just to the comments that the activity that we're using security guards is not criminal.
That's correct. I mean, it's really a behavioral thing. The private security can't arrest people. They can detain, but they can't arrest. The comment was made to suggest that the security is not there to replace a police presence. Security is there to deal with some misbehavior that was going on that we needed to correct when the police department was not fully staffed and couldn't provide the resources needed.
And that's why I'm just a little bit confused because I'm hearing that this was to supplement the police department for understaffing, but we're actually not using it for the same purposes that the police department would be. So I'm a little confused on how we're using this service to supplement our PD.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, it really is not to supplement PD. It's to deal with misbehavior in the downtown area that private security can deal with. A couple of years ago, I went to the police department and suggested that they would really be a better group to oversee the security than I would. It's not exactly in my job description. And the police suggested that they don't deal with private security, that it was our role to deal with it. So it's not to supplement police, it's to deal with misbehavior when police presence couldn't be there.
Director Bernard, did you have something to add?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, I think a good example of how security works, kind of in juxtaposition or comparison to PD, I think a great example is the libraries. And, especially when we're fully staffed and security guards aren't missing their shifts, having a guard on site throughout operating hours of those facilities has proven to be very beneficial. And I'm directly quoting Director Emery here, but in providing, security and protection for frontline staff and constituents using the libraries. You have somebody there at all times. That's their dedicated location or post, as they say in the security world. And so rather than having to call PD and wait for them to send an officer, there's somebody there who's kind of overseeing the facility throughout the duration of the day. And that's a real difference from how we would interact with PD. I don't say that to dismiss your point. I think there's absolutely a valid conversation to be had about there are going to be certain situations or scenarios or locations where perhaps PD does make more sense, and there'll be other situations where security proves to be more beneficial to how we're operating. And I think ultimately what's important is that we start having a conversation about, what our needs are, looking at, how we best fit those needs, and trying to develop a really, clear plan of how we're going to get there, and making decisions about what piece best fits that, that slot in the puzzle, so to speak.
I think that would be greatly appreciated. City Manager, you had some comments.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Castro, I might have Chief Ben Valdez come in over the last 2 weeks. Me and him have come up with a little bit of different strategy. I don't want to speak for him, but we're approaching the PD a little differently. So maybe in the next meeting or in the coming weeks, he can come in and do a presentation of how he's staffing a little differently to help address these concerns. Before Chief Grundler left, there was a plan in July to help with downtown already. We just moved a little differently with Chief Valdez a little faster. So maybe we'll just do that presentation. We have some other plans in the works, me and him. We're trying to get our feet underneath us with the new chief for the third time. But I think we have a really good plan. And I think just what you've seen in the back, we have 3 police officers. They're all on the bike team. We're approaching downtown a little differently. And we're approaching, especially during the daytime, how we deal with stuff. We're over the last 2 weeks, the PD has approached it differently. So I will leave it at that, but I'll have Chief Valdez come in.
Thank you. And so, as I mentioned earlier, after the conversations with you, Director Barnett, I do feel a little bit better about how we're using this. Obviously, media has their own interpretation of what we're doing and how we're spending our money, but I would like to just make the point that if there are opportunities for us to reduce the amount that we're spending on these external companies, in particular, if they're not offering us the service that we would like, if we could really work with our PD. And no further questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, Counselor, so should be no secret to anybody, because this was something I ran on it as a candidate, which was to increase the number of police officers in our force. And having contracts in place such as this, they allow for security measures to be taken. Now, as Sam mentioned, there's some instances where it's never going to go away, especially in public facilities, whether it's libraries, here at City Hall, additional support's needed. We just don't have the sheer capacity within the department right now due to the level of officers we have. And that's even with us being at near capacity. So this is where it's just as we're planning with parks, it's that shifting, right? Officers you're going to start to see an increase of officer presence in our community, which will obviously have an impact on this contract and other security contracts, but there'll never be zero, unfortunately, just because there's the need to protect not only the public, but our workforce. As we work to determine the need, and this is where I can't reiterate to the public enough, we need to understand where the need is. That way we can deploy our officers to protect our community. And one of the locations we know is downtown. It's clear and simple, downtown, whether it is with criminal nature or with folks speeding in noise. It's an issue. And so shout out to the bike team that's back there, because they're going to help us with this. They're going to be the folks that are going to actually have that authority to take on that criminal component, but the security officers are going to be in addition to support. So because again, we don't have the capacity within the force that we truly need in the community. So it's something we're working on. It's a change that we're ultimately going to have to implement, and I'm thankful that Interim Chief Valdez is being strategic about this because it's not just downtown, it's just not the south side, it's everywhere in our community. We wish we had much more officer presence just to address the issues that we're having. Now, contracts aren't, they're not the factor that is going to provide the support that police, they're not going to eliminate police support. They're going to be the and two, so to speak. It's unfortunately the society we live in. I wish it wasn't the case, but we need to ensure that city facilities, city spaces are safe, and contracts such as this are the way that government goes about protecting our residents. So hopefully that's helpful.
Definitely. Sorry. And Councilor Casa, I know you're waiting. Just one direct response. My big concern, and in particular about some of the comments that were made, is if it's not criminal activity and it's just things we don't want to see, that makes me feel a particular way about us criminalizing poverty that I really hope that we're not going down. Thank you.
Councilor Cassett.
Thank you, Mayor. Really glad to see you here, Sam. Because poor Travis, I kind of trapped him and I was like, oh, my questions aren't for you. Sorry about this. When I pulled this the other night. We've already kind of touched on it, but another piece besides how this amplifies or supports or, adds to police, there's also been some conversations around like infrastructure needs. So for example, Midtown has basically been sitting empty. As Midtown starts to develop, I'm curious what our security needs look like there. Similar with parks, the one I can really think about is Herb Martinez. We're getting lights there. There's this whole concept of eyes on the park. It's one of the reasons that the rail yard is such a challenge because it was built way off to the side. There's no eyes on the park. It's, a very attractive place for somebody who might want to do something that is not a great thing to do. And so I do think that there is also this deterrence factor of security. So even if they're not arresting, their presence helps. And we know that just presence of people in general helps. So I don't know if you can speak to this now, but one thing that I asked it was Quality of Life, right? Yeah. Was, as we're looking long term and as we're making some of these infrastructure changes that are putting more lights or putting more people and more, development at Midtown, or if we're able to put in more security systems in specific areas, what does that do for our security needs in the future, and how does that maybe dovetail with some of the conversations that are having with Deputy Chief or Interim Chief Valdez, excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Cassett. It's a great question. Thank you. So I think a good example of what you're talking about is Midtown. And, 5-6 years ago, when Midtown was essentially completely vacant, we had 2 24-hour, 7-day-a-week shifts. So 2 guards on patrol at all hours of every day of the week, just due to the nature of a 64-acre, 35 building campus. It's a very attractive nuisance. And as we've brought in more tenants and more businesses and Midtown started to come back alive, we have dramatically reduced that. We went from 2 guards to a single guard. And now not only are we down to a single guard, but during the day, we often don't have guards on duty because there's enough activity that it's no longer that attractive nuisance. And then just to, as a comment on the, that dynamic, I think the rail yard's a great example of it. I believe, talking with our property manager, Mr. Tim Farrell, about the rail yard specifically, he mentioned that the security team there logs anywhere from, maybe 3 to 8 incidents every night in the rail yard. And it is that concept of, we've intentionally, well, definitely unintentionally kind of created this attractive nuisance that creates a space that it's easy for people to feel is a place they can go to and conduct themselves in appropriate manners, and having security there as a definitely a deterrent, but also as an intervention to prevent those behaviors from escalating to the point where we need to bring PD in has been really beneficial. And both Midtown and Rail Yard are great examples of how the security model has worked really well to help, relieve or reduce the burden on security and also protect property in the community.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that that's also something for us to think about is as we do, develop Midtown and we have some big parks in there, let's make sure that those are not attractive nuisances, that there are eyes on those parks, that there is appropriate lighting. Parking garages, don't know what to do about those. That's just kind of the nature of what a parking garage is. So, but as we're looking at these long-term goals and how we shift these things, I agree with the mayor that I don't think we're ever going to be at a place where we would not need security contracts to help supplement just the safety needs of city facilities in the city at large. That said, and thank you, Councilor Castro, for bringing up the point that all of our on-call contracts, so not just this one, but all of our on-call contracts are maximums, not guarantees. How much are we typically spending of these contracts per year? And again, do we foresee that, potentially decreasing as things shift, or do we not have those numbers yet?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, it's been a number of years since I've been actively involved in managing any of the purchase orders, and I can tell you that between Midtown and the Rail Yard are what I'm most familiar with, and I would assume we're probably somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000 per year throughout the whole city. I can't speak to that, but
And is that 350 to 5? Is that per site or those?
for both
For
together.
both together. Okay. Okay. All right.
My apologies.
No problem. So, I mean, it's a significant amount. And again, as we continue to look at ways that we might be able to use different components. Now, I had also asked about, security systems. Is that something that is really relevant to this conversation? It's kind of sounding like maybe not, because like security at the libraries, that's when it's open, or, the park, you can't put a security system on the park. So is that a relevant piece to this or not so much?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Cass said, we have found that security systems really are not much of a deterrent. More often than not, one, they protect buildings. So obviously if there's a fire or there's, some sort of break-in or incident, we can get alerted and PD can respond. If we put in camera systems, they tend to be less of a deterrent than we would like them to be. They tend to be used more for providing information about an incident after the fact than preventing the incident from happening.
Got it.
And so the guard is there is a very distinct difference between those types of systems and a human being on site.
Well, at least that's at the moment not a job that AI can take. So, there's a silver lining there. Well, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you for helping us understand how these are using and how we're looking at this dynamic.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Counselor Fagali.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Burnett, for all your answers. I am wondering, I think on the same lines as Councilor Cassett, if these are varying numbers every year, and this is a maximum that we can use, is there a possibility that we could make this a one-year extension and evaluate how much we're actually using and potentially have a smaller on-call for the future?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Fagali, absolutely. I think there's nothing that prevents that from happening. I think staff and purchasing in particular in this situation is probably looking more at the workload of staff and what it takes to get a contract amendment through the full process, but it's not an impossibility and it's not an unreasonable burden. If it was the will of the council, I think it's a reasonable request.
Is it possible for you to get us, or for someone, maybe finance, to get us the amount that has been expended from these contracts?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Fagali. I will circle back with Mr. Dutton Leda, our procurement officer, this evening when I leave and ask them to run a report on how much has been spent on each contract to date and have that sent out to the council.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions? Just, I guess one last question. This contract can be canceled at any time, even though we're extending it for a certain number of years, correct? So to Councilor Pagali's point, if we were to do a 1 year, we ultimately have that authority built into the contract already.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. There is a clause, I think, we're required to, if I remember correctly, boilerplate for us is a 30-day notice to a vendor to cancel a contract, but we always do retain that right.
Okay, so to that point, Counselor, if as we work to get numbers and we determine, hey, we want to rethink, or we still have that authority, so. Okay. Any other comments, questions? None? Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please? Nope, sorry.
Move to approve.
Second.
Now we can do a roll call vote.
Yes, Mayor, Counselor Bustamante,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Barrett. Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please, Madam City Clerk.
Next item is 9O. This is request for approval of amendment number 3 to item 22-0301 with Arrowhead Security, DBA Vet Sec Protection, our Agency for Security Guard Services at city facilities to increase compensation by $2,200,000 for a new total amount of $12,100,000 and extend the term to June 30, 2028.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Councilor Castro, you pulled this.
I think I got all my questions answered earlier. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. Next item, please, Madam City Clerk.
Next item is item P. This is a request for approval of a budget adjustment request in the amount of $150,000 from general fund to tourism lodging tax fund for fiscal year 2026 downtown security contract.
Councilor Castro, you pulled this item?
Yes, I will just say that this is to finish out this fiscal year. Director Randall, if you could just explain a little bit of why we're seeing this contract.
Sorry, I thought it was on. The funding for this has been added as we've gone along. I looked up the last addition that went into it was $350,000 from lodger's tax. And this just this will round out the amount of funding we need for the balance of the this purchase order that's in place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just, we had a short discussion about this at Quality of Life. It was your testimony that tourism cannot help us with this 150,000, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, that's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, any other questions from governing body members? Seeing and hearing none, Madam City Clerk, did we get a motion?
Move to
Oh,
approve.
Motion. Got a motion.
Move to approve.
Councilor Bustamante made a motion.
Second.
And a second. Now we've got a motion and a second discussion. Hearing seeing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Castro,
No.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Barrett,
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante.
Yes.
Motion passed.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you, Madam.
Need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Got to get that one for the record. All right, next item, please, Madam City Clerk.
Mayor, we're moving on to 10. This is action items on the discussion agenda. 10A is a request for approval of a professional services agreement with HomeWise, Inc. to administer the Community Energy Efficiency Development Seed Program for eligible low-income households in the city of Santa Fe, utilizing State of New Mexico seed grant funds awarded through the Energy Conservation and Management Division of the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department in the total amount of $1,254,170 through December 30th, 2027. And do we have Erica Renaud, Sustainability Supervisor here?
Might she be online?
I do not see her online, Mayor.
Okay. Turn to the governing body. Any questions or comments about this item?
Move to approve?
Second.
And I just have a quick comment for the public, just in case this is, I guess for you, Mayor, this is a pass-through. So this is not our funding, it is state funding going through a third party, going to community.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I got a motion and a second. That roll call, please, Madam City Clerk.
Counselor Fagali?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Barrett?
Yes.
Excuse me, Counselor Bustamante?
Yes.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is 10B. This is a request for approval of a professional services contract with Urban Alchemy for operation of an emergency homeless shelter in the total amount of $1,343,993 for a 6-month term. And here to answer your questions is Youth and Family Services Program Manager Kristen Woods.
Okay, as Ms. Woods comes up, didn't know if y'all had a presentation. Okay, you do? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Sandy Emery. I'm the Community Services Director for the city. Just as we're getting started on the presentation, I wanted to thank you all for your attention to this matter. And I also really wanted to thank the community for their attention to this matter. I understand that there are a lot of questions around this particular topic, and there are a lot of really strong feelings around it. And I'm hopeful that this presentation will bring some more awareness to the operations current and future at 2801 Cerrillos Road. And I really want to thank the staff for all of their work in fielding the questions and making sure that we are getting the data to council, to our community as quickly as we can, and really holding ourselves accountable for the contracts that we execute. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Emery.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. My name is Leah Azul Salaveri, Director of Youth and Family Services, and tonight we're here to give the governing body a full picture of our emergency shelter at 2801 Cerrillos Road. The work the city has done to get here, what the data tells us about the outcomes, and what we're asking you to approve tonight. First and foremost, this is a city-led program. We set the standards, we monitor performance, and we are accountable for the results. So let me walk you through that. So what we're asking tonight, so we have two primary items before you. First, we want to share information and specifically provide a transparent look into the oversight systems the city has in place and the services guests are receiving at Agape House. Second, we want to share information in regards to our 6-month
contract for shelter operations moving forward and make you aware that the city has completed a formal competitive procurement, a full RFP process, and has entered into a 6-month contract. This contract is defined with stronger metrics, accountability, and flexibility for the city moving forward. So before we get into where we are at today, it's worth understanding how we got here. When the city opened Agape House, we were responding to an urgent community need. Homelessness concerns were increasing rapidly, and constituents and community members were raising concerns about public health and safety. Emergency contracts exist precisely for moments like this. They allowed us to stand up services quickly before a traditional procurement would have been possible. That emergency period gave us time to observe, collect data, and build towards a stronger contract that you'll hear about tonight. The city made a deliberate decision to move from a 16-hour to a 24-hour model, and I want to explain why that is, because this context is key in understanding the work that's happening today on the ground. Under the original model, about 75 guests had to leave the shelter every morning. That means people experiencing homelessness, many with serious mental illness, substance use disorders, and trauma histories were back on the street each day. It also increased visible homelessness in the surrounding neighborhood and reduced the effectiveness of case management. The 24-hour model means a guest can stay and get respite and repair. This translates to stability. It means that the case managers on site can build deeper relationships with people in their path towards more permanent housing solutions. This is an evidence-based model and best practice for emergency shelter stabilization. Next, I want to share an overview of the services currently happening and how our team manages and supports our operator partner. On the monitoring side, our team pulls weekly calls for public safety data from the Regional Emergency Communications Center. We receive weekly outcome and demographic data from the operator as well, and we receive quarterly performance reports. City staff conduct regular site visits and maintain open communication with the operator to problem solve as issues arise. In regards to response, when concerns do come up from neighbors, from city councilors, or from our own monitoring processes, we escalate these appropriately. We coordinate directly with our city teams between SFPD, fire, and city leadership. Contract compliance is monitored continuously, and in emergencies, operators are encouraged to work directly with 911 responders. In regards to services, Agape House provides medical care, mental health referrals, substance use support, and other wraparound services such as employment connections. Guests receive 3 meals a day. 90% of staff have lived experience, and this model of care is key because it's rooted in trust and provides trauma-informed care in alignment with SAMHSA's 6 principles. So next, I'd like to share a little bit more information on the data we're receiving. Urban Alchemy has shared robust data, and as the San Francisco New Mexican reported earlier today, fire, police, and EMS calls are down 48% in the first few months of 2026 as compared to last year. Urban Alchemy does, as we previously mentioned, provide multiple data metrics on a weekly and a quarterly basis. And beyond that, we're in continuous and frequent communication with them on a daily and weekly basis around many other sort of connection points across the community as well. So I want to share next some questions and answers in regards to the competitive process. So first and foremost, would like to share sort of the timeline of progress to date. So as mentioned, the emergency contract was originally conceived in June of 2025. We have since issued an RFP. We received proposals back in May. We have conducted evaluation and negotiation, and we are moving forward with a contract award. So what's different in the new contract? So diving deeper into some of these changes, the new contract is materially stronger than the emergency contract that preceded it, and this again was intentional. We have several new changes in regards to reporting, staffing, the performance metrics, term and flexibility, and compliance and community relations. The new contract requires further specified metrics and standardized formats that are more appropriate for the data that we're receiving. It also specifies that we receive job descriptions and pay scales so that we can better understand the staff that are actually serving our clients on the ground and how that translates to success. We have standardized compliance measures that will not only apply to this new contract, but actually apply to all of our homelessness contracts moving forward. And this is part of a broader effort to build a consistent accountability citywide framework. The 6 months also allow us to have 2 renewal options, which is again intentional. This provides the city more time and the structure needed to reassess, expand competition, or make changes if needed. On compliance and community relations, the new contract also emphasizes and helps promote some of the great work that's happening, including Urban Alchemy's hotline and some of the escalation procedures that do take place when issues occur. Of note, I'd also like to highlight some of the staffing changes, or rather not changes, but considerations in this new contract award. The new contract includes 26.5 FTE total, and those are positions and staff that are on site every week to operate the Agape House. This staffing model includes supervisors, practitioners, care coordinators, a kitchen supervisor responsible for 3 daily meals and food safety compliance, a project director, and a director of operations. And again, this level of staffing is quite robust, and it's important to ensure that we're providing proportionate services for clients in need. I do want to highlight some of the frequently asked questions we get, and hopefully, sharing some of these recurring themes. Agape is still a 24-hour emergency shelter, and as mentioned, we believe that this is a best practice to ensure public safety and client outcome success. Street outreach is covered in the city's work in a multitude of ways. So we have our city teams that currently touch homelessness in a multitude of different structural elements. We have park rangers, we have constituent services that are constantly fielding community concerns, ARU, many other departments, including youth and families. And then we also have our external partners, including the Lifelink and others who do this work on the ground. Staff at Urban Alchemy and at Agape House are using evidence-based de-escalation as a best practice. This is embedded in our contracts. The city is receiving robust data to evaluate success, and we've chosen to award Urban Alchemy due to, again, that formal RFP process and in line with our procurement standards. So next steps and looking ahead. So I want to just close out by putting, again, some context on the table in terms of where we're headed as a division and the work that we hope to accomplish around homelessness moving forward. We will continue 24-hour operations and monitor performance against the stronger requirements in the new contract. And of note, we are also, again, working to standardize data and compliance across all of our contracts. We are also planning to launch a public-facing performance dashboard so that the community can see the results and the progress that we're seeing day to day. On the facility side, we are beginning to work on identifying a longer-term plan to replace 2801 Cerrillos, and keeping in mind that the building was never designed as a long-term shelter care facility. So we are taking seriously this obligation to find something more suitable and sustainable moving forward. Finally, we're excited to invite community members and the public at large to our Homelessness Summit, which is currently scheduled for June 29th at the Convention Center in partnership with the Mayor's Office. This will be an incredible opportunity for the community to come together and engage directly around our strategy and plans moving forward, to hear from partners and help shape the work that's coming next. I hope you'll join us there, and thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Thank you, Director Salvery. Any questions from governing body members? Councilor Bustamante.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm just want to make sure that this new contract price accurately reflects what they see as a day-to-day operations model, because there have been a lot of concerns that the previous contract they ran through the money pretty quick. And so I just want to make sure that that has been looked at this time around.
Counselor, yes, thank you for the question. So we have done our due diligence, and we are very confident that within the budget that we've proposed, that we should have, again, that very robust level of staffing, case management, and support at the Agape site.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Counselor Castro.
Thank you so much. And this might actually be a little bit more for Agape staff. So Mike, if you want to come up, I had a few questions about the levels of staffing that are available and potentially the housing for folks that we are welcoming into our community.
Sure. Just for kind of clarity in terms of what our staffing model is, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Castro, we have a practitioner role, a supervisor role, and then there's the management level role. So in a 24/7 facility, one of the things that we're trying to cover here, is the microphone? Yeah. One of the things that we're trying to maintain is we're trying to maintain reasonable quality of life for the area right around the shelter. So during the day shift and swing shift, so that would be from 7 in the morning until 11:30 at night, we have a 4 practitioner, 1 supervisor model. For the overnight period from 11 to 7 in the morning, we go down to a 3-1 practitioner to supervisor ratio. So that's really where the primary amount of staffing comes from, is that's to keep everybody safe and the surrounding area qualified.
And we had some previous discussions about sort of regionally where you're getting some of your staff, if we're having to bring in a lot of staff from other communities, how are we doing in terms of recruitment?
We're doing pretty well. There's still, for this kind of work, it's very difficult work. And we're trying to identify men and women who are kind of have lived experience and are ready and able to do this work. So we have approximately, across all of our programs, we have 36 active staff. That's more than what this contract is calling for, because I'm also including the outreach services that are still currently running. And so most of those individuals come from the northern New Mexico area, if not the city of Santa Fe nearby, because they're drawing no more than 30, 45 minutes, less than an hour away.
Thank you so much. And now there's some questions about where staff is living, and potentially how recent that lived experience is. Do you have any context around how we vet folks being ready to serve the community?
Sure. So we do 2 things. So they run through, there's an interviewing process, of course, during that process. During the second stage is the new employee orientation, where our trainers and our kind of leadership have an opportunity to see our potential employees, our new hires, in person. So that's one of the places where people filter out. And then we have a 90-day introductory period where we're watching closely the performance of each employee. And if an employee is not performing during that period, of course, they're getting input along the way. We will terminate them before the end of that 90 days.
And I would assume most of the folks have lived experience, but are currently outside of the continuum of care or have permanent housing. Are we potentially employing people that are still precariously housed?
So what I would say to that, and what has happened in some cases this year for some of the employees who haven't remained employed with us, is when they came to us originally, they were housed independently, they were living independently. Their circumstances changed, something happened, whether it's a relapse, a traumatic event in the community, like a homicide of a personal friend. Those incidents can trigger relapses. And then so they may ultimately end up back in the continuum of care somewhere.
I don't think I have too many more questions. I do want to commend you for the work that you've done. It is very difficult. I do have a little bit of a hesitation combining the emergency shelter with a work program, but I think we're doing the best that we can in our department to sort of meet the needs of both of these constituencies. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilor Fagali and then Councilor Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a contract question, it says that the term of this is 6 months, with an option to renew up to 2 years. Can you talk about how that is decided and who does that? And is it, I imagine, the same rate? I don't see details about that.
Sorry, just want to clarify that point. So the contract is a 6-month period with the option of extending beyond twice for an additional 6 months. So it would be a 1.5 years max.
And who decides that? Would that come back to us? Would that be the city manager? I'm seeing nodding, so come back
Yes.
to us.
We would
And-
come back to you.
Okay, same rate.
Mayor Garcia, Counselor Fadali. Yes, that's also intentional in that, like I said, when I came to the podium, you know, we really are understanding from our community that there's a lot of feedback around this issue, and we want to really honor what our community is asking for in having this shorter period so we can really review, assess, and make decisions in a way that our community voices are being heard, and that council has opportunity to also voice the needs of the constituents in their districts as well.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Counselor Barrett.
Sorry, thanks. You know, I'm just kind of putting on my social worker hat here as someone, you know, who's had experience and had work experience in these types of jobs. I know we've had a lot of constituent concerns, mostly about the price tag. I feel like we're always hearing about that. And I know Director Emery has brought that up too, like a lot of constituent feedback about why the price is so much higher. But I actually am a fan from the social work perspective of this dual model of getting people out of the system, providing employment, workforce solutions, and also providing a direct service, because they're doing both. I've gotten a lot of emails that people have reported, oh, Urban Alchemy says they're just, you know, providing jobs for formerly incarcerated persons, but they're actually doing two things. And I think that's comes with a higher price tag. I think, did you say 25 employees FTE or 35? 36. So 26, right? So we're providing all of that employment too. So I think when the public, you know, comes to us with those concerns, like we also have to think about it that way. And I also think, you know, how much it costs to incarcerate a person in America. That price tag is running through my head too. I think it's about $65,000 to incarcerate a person in America. So thinking about that and getting somebody workforce employment and stability and, you know, having that lived experience and providing a direct service as a social worker, coming from that model of ACEs and, you know, trauma, and then someone having that lived experience, and you can't put a price tag on that. And I don't think that our society, we can really put a price tag on that either. Taking somebody out of a system and providing them stable employment in a caring, compassionate way. I think when we think of that high price tag, we also need to think of those things from the social services perspective. Thanks.
Counselor. Any other? Counselor Cassett.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I agree, Counselor Barrett, that there is a lot of benefit to this dual program. You know, especially when we talk about how much economic, oh, that was very nice. Thank you. How much economic inequity is intrinsically related to the, you know, increase that we are seeing in people who are experiencing homelessness. I also think it's important, you know, to Director Emery's point, or maybe it was Leah's, but can't remember. But this is what it costs to do this. And one of our big challenges was that people were getting kicked out during the day. And so that was causing a lot of the concerns that we were seeing in the Cerritos Road corridor. And so I think it is important that we invest in this money or invest in this program. It is a lot. To Counselor Barrett's point, this is also, you know, preventative as well. It's a lot cheaper to prevent homelessness than to treat it. And we know that a lot of individuals that are coming out of incarceration, many of them wind up homeless. And so there are a lot of positives to the combination here. I have a question that you probably don't have an answer to. It's not a fun question, which is that we have a timeline for which we have to move away from 2801 Cerritos Road. As I frequently tell people, if there was an easy solution to where we should move the shelter, we would have done it a very long time ago. And this has continued to be a challenge as to where can we go. I know there's been discussion around building. We don't seem to take capital projects on very quickly for a variety of reasons. So I am curious where we are in this challenge of, we have a deadline, which is good. I think we need to put a deadline. But it is complex and it is going to cost us money. And I also think that as we look at like kind of the combination of services that we have here, we have locked in already on a few key places. We stood up Consuelos. That one's on our responsibility checklist. We have the pallet shelters. That's on or the micro community, excuse me. That's on our responsibility checklist, as is this one. And so, I think that when we take a look at, I know there's a variety of different programs and things that people are talking about, and that's really wonderful. The city has already committed to these three, and we really do need to see them through. So I'm curious if there is any update on how we are going to do this previously, seemingly impossible task of actually moving to a more appropriate location.
Thank you, Councilor Cassett. And I do just kind of want to underscore a bit of what you said, because I think it's important to name in particular that this facility at 2801 Cerrillos is just really not designed for this use case. And as a result, regardless or agnostic of whatever provider is there, they're going to have an uphill battle in, doing good case management and ensuring that there's trauma-informed care in a congregate setting with individuals with very high needs, often co-occurring challenges around substance use and significant mental illness in the space that they're currently residing within. So point very well taken. I think in regards to plans moving forward, one concrete opportunity will be our homelessness summit coming up the end of the month. And through that convening, that event is intended to be a catalyst event that brings together the county, the state, philanthropic partners, city staff, right? Affordable housing leaders to really develop and build some of these longer term plans and, really identify what those priorities are, because we have several different models. We have micro communities, we have, non-congregate adaptable reuse, right? There's lots of models that work out there and there isn't a right or wrong answer. But being able to move forward with a clear idea of exactly what we want to accomplish by when and aligning those stakeholders so that we can meet those deadlines and be successful. So I'm very hopeful in, the promise of that event that we'll be able to kind of put forward some initial plans. Beyond that, and because we want to make sure that we're dovetailing with an implementation portion, we are also pursuing a strategic planning process, and more to come about that in the subsequent months. But we're hoping through that process, we really want to make sure that the plan is actionable. So we will be defining, roles and responsibilities, funding streams. We also know that in the past, the state has been a tremendous partner in funding some of this work. So we will be, definitely no stone unturned, right, in terms of making sure that first and foremost, we're driving results for clients and folks in need.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And Leah, can you speak a little bit more to, to your very, very well taken point that this was never designed for this use? And I know one of the challenges is that this was supposed to be just an emergency winter shelter. The nature of the problem grew and people this grew out of people's desire to help this population. And I mean, the nature of the problem has changed. So when you are talking about what an appropriate building or location looks like, what are those criteria that we are looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question, Counselor. So a few things that we would be looking for specifically, again, and there's different models, right? So different models will be more amenable to certain populations. Right now, we're seeing the highest need for specifically chronic individuals. And again, folks with that co-occurring significant mental health and or substance use disorder. So for those clients in particular, often we're able to see better outcomes and get people out of encampments and off of the streets indoors, when they are able to have privacy, when they're able to bring their personal belongings, their pets, their partners, we call it the 3 Ps. And really, again, when they're able to have respite, because many of these individuals have significant trauma. I've heard stories about folks who come inside and the first week that they're indoors, they're literally sleeping the entire time because they haven't had, you know, a solid night's rest in however many years, right? So this is, again, just to name and really underscore that the clients that we're serving will have significant needs for those folks and for the 100 folks that are currently being served at Agape. Ideally, I think we'd be looking at congregate if we're able, or sorry, non-congregate if we're able to find a non-congregate option. So something like micro communities might work well, something like, again, adaptive reuse of a motel hotel building. Unfortunately, with the more brick and mortar models, they take more time, right? And more funding investment. So again, lots of community conversations we have to build that plan and make sure that it's feasible, but low barrier, ideally non-congregate or combination of semi-congregate. And again, just with these really robust services so that we can make sure that we're aiding people into getting back on their feet.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then, you know, I know that there is, this has been a challenging site for the surrounding community. We also know that shutting down beds can cause a lot of problems. We've seen this, Espanola experience this quite a bit when they their shelter closed and they had an encampment and then they said no more to their sanctioned encampment. And then you started hearing from a lot of businesses. So, I mean, it really, there is about, you know, how do we make sure that people have a place to go so that they are somewhere that is safe for them to be and that is also safe for the surrounding community. So as we're talking about that longer term plan, and I know this could be a long conversation, so, you know, short answer, but around, you know, how do we also make sure that we are creating a place and what are some of the best practices when we look at creating a place that is beneficial for both the clients inside as well as the, you know, surrounding community and surrounding neighborhoods or businesses or, you know, the people that are going to be having these individuals welcoming them as their neighbors.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think some other sort of plans that I'd love to share that our division is working on to that end. So we are in the process of developing an encampment management policy and procedure that would help kind of lay the foundation for how, again, our community-wide teams are addressing particularly street homelessness and folks living outside in arroyos and encampments, places that are not intended for human habitation. And part of that process would be setting clear criteria so that we have an equitable approach that, you know, stands up to regulatory, you know, constraints and things and making sure that we adhere to public health and safety first and foremost, but ultimately all with the intention of getting folks into shelter and housing and back on their feet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the summit at the end of the month. You know, so thank you to you and to Mayor Garcia and to everybody who's been putting in that work and our community partners for getting that planned. So this is challenging, really challenging work. And I really just want to thank everybody for everything they're doing here. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Barrett.
Just another comment. And I know when I met with Leah, when I first started, we talked about this, but you know, because this is like Councilor Cassett just said, it's bigger than urban alchemy, right? This whole conversation around homelessness and you know, I know the summit's coming up, but we, you know, just so the community knows, and I think they already do, but we have to be doing all the things, right? It's not urban alchemy versus anybody. It's all of us together and all these service providers together. You know, that's why this summit is going to be amazing, coming together for these long-term solutions, because we need urban alchemy. We need interfaith. We need Consuelos. We need safe parking lots. We need all our pallet shelters in all of our districts. To solve this problem, we all have to come together as a community to work on this for our unhoused neighbors and friends. So I just think it's good to have maybe like a mentality or like a paradigm shift that nobody is working against each other. We're all working together as a community to solve this issue. Thanks.
Councilor. Any other questions? I do have one question for the Urban Alchemy team. So I don't know if Mike is best to answer this, but we've heard a lot from folks regarding the current policy, where I think, and maybe you can correct me if it's wrong, folks are eligible to hold a bed for 3 days. And so I guess a question, because it's built into the contract, that there is got to be a certain percentage of bed utilization. On the contract, it's 85%. So I guess twofold contract. What is the current utilization percentage?
I'm pretty sure, Mr. Mayor, and councilors, thanks for the question. I'm pretty sure that that percentage was in the Q3 report. I think it was 93% for Q3 was the percentage there.
Okay. Given 93, that's great, but that still ultimately means 7 beds that somebody could be in. And the previous operator allowed 100% capacity. So is there a way you can build it into your policy to where we don't have a vacancy at all? And I understand the philosophy why you have, folks have a reserve space because it creates a much more sustainable process for somebody. But in the instance where, I don't know if this is an extreme, where you might have a vacancy, a particular night of 20 beds, 25 beds. I'd hate to have any number of beds go unoccupied. So can you tell me more about how you might be able to mitigate that as much as possible?
So what I can tell you is that we're trying to do best practices as much as possible in order to keep our beds full. A typical in a performance-based contract for 24/7 shelter, low barrier shelter services like this, a typical bed occupancy rate, that's the kind of the bottom threshold, is 90%. So that's kind of what always to make sure that we never want to reach that. The reality is, in the waiting list that we're working from, we're constantly trying to fill the beds that we have, except for the medical respite beds. So we always try to do our best to keep one medical respite bed open for men and one open for women in case there's a discharge from the hospital that they're not ready to go directly out to the street and live on their own. So that's the typical thing. I will say that, as the year has gone on, our occupancy rate has really increased. I think you'll see in this last quarter of the year, we're typically we're at 95, 97. We've had a few nights in the past week where we've been over capacity, where we actually did set up a cot for somebody who came from the HUGS program that we didn't have a bed for. We set up a cot for them in the main, day room. So we're doing the best to fill up our beds. And if someone comes in a kind of a crisis circumstance and, their story matches, we'll try to meet their needs. If they're the ones who are showing up, we'll try to meet their needs the best we can.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ender. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
No other questions for me.
Thank you.
Any other questions from governing body members? And if not, what's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Barrett,
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
motion pass.
Okay, with that, it is 7:00. Is there a will from governing body member to modify our agenda?
I move that we go directly to petitions from the floor and then resume with our usual order of business.
Okay, so we've got a motion to modify the agenda. Second, any discussion? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Barrett,
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, we are going to move to petitions from the floor. It's the same process as normal. Every individual gets 2 minutes. Please identify yourself with if address, if not by your council district, and you will hear some type of music, charm, or sound as your time has wrapped up. So with that, we'll go and take comments here in the auditorium first.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia and city councilors. My name is Kathy Garcia, a renter in District 2 and a staff member of Chainbreaker Collective, a member-led economic and environmental justice organization with over 800 dues-paying members, the majority low-income people of color living on the front lines of the housing crisis. Chainbreaker Collective supports the approval of the MATA 50-year ground lease, sponsored by Mayor Garcia and Councilors Cassett and Faulkner. And we urge the governing body to provide a unanimous yes vote to approve the Midtown Art and Design Alliance's application for a 50-year ground lease with the city. For the past 7 years, Chainbreaker members have been working with the city and partner organizations to create the Midtown Community Development Plan, the Midtown Master Plan, and now the Hopewell Mann Neighborhood Stabilization Plan, each of these grounded in the Residents' Bill of Rights passed unanimously by this council in 2015. Starting in 2018, the Midtown Engagement Partners combined the efforts of multiple local organizations to conduct deep community engagement during the height of the pandemic to ensure the people most vulnerable to risk were centered in the development of the Midtown campus and surrounding neighborhoods. The Midtown Arts and Design Alliance, born from this community process, is based and built entirely on these two community-developed Midtown plans. Chainbreaker members will celebrate approval of this project as the first action taken by this governing body to honor the original purpose of the campus, to honor the culture of our shared history, and to honor our shared futures by minimizing the harm of gentrification and displacement. Just as we have for the past 21 years, Chainbreaker will continue to organize, educate, and activate members around the community development plan and look forward to further opportunities to celebrate true community-led processes. Vote yes tonight. Thank you.
My name is Greg Mello. I'm with the Los Alamos Study Group, headquartered in Albuquerque. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors, for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I think the first thing I want to say is that some of you may know that the National Nuclear Security Administration had put in a proposal to take over the Midtown campus with the city and turn it into a national center for nuclear weapons. And fortunately, the city in its wisdom, because of the processes that the city had undertaken, did not seriously say yes to that proposal, even though the federal government was ready to expense out all of the environmental remediation and construction at the site without any risk to the city, other than the purpose of it. I would like to say that we're very concerned about the expansion of plutonium pit production at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Last week, the House of Representatives passed a bill which would statutorily require Los Alamos's pit production to increase, essentially double, so that this would not be just a Trump administration proposal, but also a law, should it pass. And at the moment, we don't see a lot of barriers to that. This year, a $2.5 billion ask for next year for the lab, and it has a lot of externalities here in Santa Fe. I want to say that I'd be happy to brief members of the council who could perhaps have this discussion on behalf of other members of the council so that people could come up to speed on this, since it's not well reported in the newspaper particularly. The county has expressed itself even faintly, but in opposition to the plutonium pit mission of Los Alamos National Laboratory. And the NNSA has requested comments on its environmental impact statement about this. So the time is ripe, and I think I'm over time. So thank you very much for your patience, and Godspeed all of you in the decisions you're making this evening.
All right. Let's not have this argument, Mayor. Let's not. I'm not giving you my name. Attorney, let's stop this. You're not gonna get my name. So yesterday could have been a beautiful thing. Beautiful. The South Side needed that meeting. It's needed that meeting for a long time. You guys made it a political spectacle. It did not need to be in Spanish. I'm sorry. This is America. English. Tonight, you spoke Spanish in our council meeting. Okay. Did you know that you have to have a translator to translate that to people that do not understand Spanish? What you did was so disrespectful to your constituents that do not speak Spanish. That is horrible. And I have respect for what you guys did yesterday. I may not like you guys, but I respect what you did. Let me tell you another thing. If you don't like your job, quit. If you need help, you guys took this job knowing what you signed up for. I don't work for you. You work for me. I am the people. We are the people. You don't work unless, oh, this person comes to you with a project with money in their hands. That's not the way it's supposed to work. You work for us. We don't work for you. When we call you, we expect to get a call back. When we ask for help, we expect for help. You guys are talking about homelessness. Do you understand? Have you ever lived on the streets? I want one of you guys to go out there and spend the night on the streets with a homeless person. Go a day in their shoes and see what it's like. You don't understand. They're drug addicts. They have mental issues. 90% of them don't want to be put into housing. They rather be on the streets because they can do what they can do.
Your time has expired, sir.
Need to get
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Dave Weir, and I serve on the Board of Interfaith Community Services. Tonight, I'm speaking to you on behalf of the hundreds of Santa Feans who are unhoused and thousands of our community supporters, many who sent 675 individual letters of support of the Rock to you in the last 24 hours. We're asking you to specifically list the Rock on the city's infrastructure capital improvement plan and identify Interfaith Community Services as the community partner. Santa Fe has already adopted a homeless action plan. That plan calls for expanded day services, outreach, navigation, coordination, and community partnerships. The Rock directly advances all of these priorities. At the same time, our community is facing growing pressure from homelessness, behavioral challenges, and the fentanyl crisis. The New Mexico Department of Health recently reported a 104% increase in overdose deaths and a 131% increase in overdose-related emergency department visits in Santa Fe County alone, with all of them being fentanyl linked to the majority of these fatalities. These challenges place enormous pressure on first responders, law enforcement, emergency rooms, and taxpayers. Every day that people remain disconnected from services, the costs increase. The Rock already has $1.3 million in private funding and broad public and service provider support. The question is no longer whether we need solutions. The question is whether we are willing to align our capital planning with our adopted priorities. We request that you revise the city's ICIP plan from a general homelessness allocation to include the Rock, a shovel-ready project that will meet Santa Fe's needs both today and into the future. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Hadley Fairbridge, and I am a student of one of the board members of Interfaith Community Services. I am 14 years old, and I am going into my freshman year at Mandela International Magnet School. The request before you tonight is straightforward. The city currently includes funding for homelessness initiatives with the ICIP, but there is no clear identified project tied to those dollars. At the same time, Santa Fe has adopted homelessness plan. The provider community has submitted unified recommendation. And the Rock stands ready as a shovel-ready infrastructure project that directly addresses documented gaps in the continuum of care. Most importantly, this project already has 1.3 million in private funding committed to opportunities like this. Do not come along often. The community has done its part. Philanthropy has done its part. Service providers have done their part. Now we are asking city to do its part by aligning its capital planning with its stated priorities in the adopted homelessness plan. It is time to take action. Listing the Rock on the ICIP with Interfaith Community Services as the community partner creates accountability, transparency, and a clear implementation of pathway for a project that is already supported, funded, and ready to move forward. Quote Nelson Mandela, "As long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality exist in our world, none of us can truly rest." Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, councilors, mayor. It's good to see you all in slightly different places. Congratulations. I'm going to speak informally. I have some remarks here, but I think I can keep it shorter by just saying I'm here to speak on 2025-38, adding seniors.
You can just please.
Matt Johns. Yeah. Although maybe I don't have to give my name. I don't know. 2025-38. Adding seniors to the micro community shelter site there near Fire Station 7. I just want to say, I think the city has good reasons for that. I tried to listen to the last meeting. I'm not sure exactly what those reasons are. It might be beneficial to add seniors to the mix of families with children and youths. But my research indicates that micro-community sites are typically very siloed in who they're serving, and there are reasons for that because it makes them successful. And I just want to say that it's important that the city be successful, and I just want to make sure that the staff and the counselors are considering, are you meeting seniors' needs? Are you meeting families with youth? Are you meeting youth's needs? If you're combining these populations, it might be a perfect mix. It's just not standard. And that's per Portland State University's Homeless Research and Action Collaboration that found stakeholders consistently identified 20 to 30 residents as the ideal size, and that there was a community cohesion in that group. Briefly, I just also want to say that recent experiences, public meetings have indicated that some of us in District 4 are not feeling fully represented. You're awesome representatives, each and every one of you. And I think spend a little time to share with us your insights and your victories and your goals. We want to be represented. We trust you to make decisions for us, but you're representing us and we want to know what you're doing, please. So thank you. Not personal, just, I know the other districts are doing meetings and I don't see the same thing going on right now. Thank you.
My name is Arthur Nudek, and I serve on the board of Interfaith Community Services. Every day, Santa Fe's police officers, emergency workers, security workers are being called on to deal with the issues of homelessness. The city's own homelessness action plan recognizes the need for outreach, coordination, community-based responses. The Rock will directly support these issues. When people have nowhere to go during the day, they hang out by the mall, in the medians, and in arroyos. And the burden falls on law enforcement and security people to take care of their concerns and messes. The Rock is a shovel-ready project, and we have raised $1.3 million in private funding so far. I'm asking you, the city, to please put this project on your ICIP list, that we might get this built and address our homelessness issue. Thank you for your time.
My name's Pelican Lee. I'm part of the Volunteer Housing for All Collaborative. And I want to talk about the new contract for 6 months with Urban Alchemy. Even though the title is emergency shelter, currently they are not operating as an emergency shelter by their own admission to our meeting in February. How is this contract different from the current contract that enables them to not operate as an emergency shelter? We don't have an emergency shelter now, and we desperately need one. Where are homeless people supposed to go with no emergency shelter and no sanctioned camping? The process for this contract looks very much like last year's rigged process. The contract already signed before it comes to the city council. Big time crunch, lot of pressure about time, no transparency. How many other entities were solicited? How much outreach was done to find other entities to put out a proposal? There should have been other proposals. Was it already decided and not competitive? I think it was a mistake in the beginning to push out Interfaith because it was operating at a much cheaper, didn't cost the city that much money. This contract went to only one committee and it was not discussed there instead of the usual 3. With this much money going to a vendor with consistent cost overruns and a shady reputation, they should get more scrutiny and more review. I don't understand why the city staff is not talking about the Rock as a longer term plan. They were saying we don't have a long-term plan, but the Rock is there ready, shovel ready. All it needs is funding and support from the city as well as other entities, but to not even mention it earlier tonight seems like a real travesty. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Nice to see you. My name's Marisol Atkins. I'm a consultant with Luz del Sol here in northern New Mexico. And I'm working with Interfaith Community Services and a number of other providers throughout our community. I just wanted to thank you, Councilor Barrett, for your comments earlier. Absolutely agree with your points about all of us are needed in this community. All the service providers are needed. All of the resources are needed to come forward. And I just kind of want to piggyback on what a few other folks stated. We understand that this issue of homelessness is so challenging for all of us, and we're all trying to do our part. And we understand that the city has an issue with 2801 Cerrillos Road needing to close in the nearest future. We have a solution that we're bringing forth. We've done our homework. We've reached out to the community. We have multiple support letters for our work. We have a trauma informed design architect on board who's helping, and we have a lot of resources already in place. I just want to echo what Pelican said. We have a solution that's here, and we're here to help you. That's why we're here. That's why we continue to reach out to see if we can be included in the ICIP. We cannot access state funds without a local fiscal sponsor. We went to the county a few weeks ago and they felt that this issue is in the purview of the city. So we're here now at the city. We really need your assistance to try and gain state funds, and we're willing to do our part. And I think we've shown that we are doing our part. So thank you for your consideration of including with clear language on the ICIP request that Interfaith be a partner. I also, one last thing, want to mention, Consuelos is running because Interfaith is the fiscal sponsor for that organization. That's why Consuelos is up right now. The mobile hygiene unit that the city purchased during COVID is running right now because Interfaith Community Services stepped up, applied for funding at Department of Health, and asked to run that for the city. I think Interfaith has shown that they've been a very good partner, and we want to continue to be so. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Erica Kidd. And I don't quite know what's going to come out of my mouth, so forgive me. Counselors and mayors, I appreciate all of you. Thank you for your service. I've been a provider in the field for too long. I don't want to give away my age here. And And I am finding myself a little bit dumbfounded at the moment. I currently work at Rise Up Santa Fe. We provide furnishings to people coming out of homelessness. Gotten one referral from Agape for a staff person. So I really want to encourage you to all speak to the different providers that all these wraparound services that are occurring, because I'm not seeing it, and I connect with all different sorts of providers because they're all coming here for the people that do get housed. Question mark there. And I think they're a wonderful work program. They've been very clear they are a work program over and over again. And this work program, the commodity, is our most vulnerable, most at risk for being exploited. So I want the best damn workers out there. Is that these folks? Maybe it is. But what I know about the interfaith people is they've been doing this predominantly through volunteers. Food wasn't a problem, and it's actually pretty good. I served there a few times. And it's clearly they have found an option. It's ready to be dug. And please consider them for the ISIP funding. I'm just really so confused. We're having the same conversations over and over again, 2 and 3 fucking years later. Apologies. Seems appropriate at this time. We need the micro communities. We need Agape. We need more beds. We need housing. You want to end homelessness, you provide houses. That does not mean affordable housing. That means housing that can be subsidized for places for people to live, to work on their issues. And now we've got more feet on the ground, more bikes on the ground. Great. Let's criminalize it more to be homeless.
Erica, the time has run out.
I know. Thank you for letting me go on a little extra.
Absolutely. Thank you for your comments.
And this is also on the citizens of Santa Fe. It's not all up to you. And that's the bigger issue here with humanity not taking care of itself.
Good evening. My name's Elizabeth West and I live at 318 Center Street in the South Capitol. And I'm here for a slightly different issue, although I'm very interested to hear the discourse amongst all of you. Thank you for moving forward on a very important issue. And I'm tempted to say rock on, but I'm here for something else that's also important to me, and that is that I do like what the H Board does. They are an arm of your body. The governing body chose, along with other groups of people, including the Planning Commission, to get an H Board going. And I think it's great. I attend pretty often, and I'm very impressed with the work they're doing. Likewise, I come here pretty often, and I really am thrilled with some of the new vigor and the way you're all working together. So I hope you will pay attention to the name of Stephanie Beninato, who has the chops to be excellent on the H Board. There's no denying it. Everybody basically almost begrudgingly agrees. She is an historian. I'd like to see her name addressed. And I hope you all will, her name will be brought up for that position and that you will vote unanimously for her. She knows her stuff. Do I always agree with her? No. But then you know me well enough to know I'm a nice person and I do not always agree with anybody. Thank you very much. You guys are great.
Hello, my name is Marcia Emerton and I live in District 4 and I'm back again. Yay rock, first of all. I won't go over things, but yay rock. But in the meantime, what we could do on a shorter term is have a safe place for people to camp. I know it's hard. I know it's going to get a lot of feedback, but if we had a nice place with some porta potties, maybe some water, and get everyone maybe who wanted to in one place where they were safe and not being harassed. The other thing is there's a movement now with really good people doing it to have safe parking spaces for people, because there's a lot of people living in their cars and it's hard. And then they have to move and then people come up and rap on their windows. If we had a space, and I know Salvation Army's working on this, but anything you guys can do to push that along in any way so they can get some rest too. A lot of these people are working. And they just can't do the rent here. It's hard. Thank you for all you do.
Is there any other member of the audience that would like to provide public comment tonight? If not, Madam City Clerk, is there anybody online?
Yes, Mayor. We'll start with Kevin Rapp.
Oh, good evening, Mayor Garcia and city councilors. I'm here tonight speaking in regards to item 16B as an owner in District 2 and an honored member of the Board of Interfaith Community Services. Apologies, I wasn't able to make it there in person. In January, Santa Fe's homelessness providers came together and presented a unified set of recommendations to Mayor Garcia. That coalition included shelters, outreach teams, housing providers, healthcare partners, and community organizations. Among the priorities identified was the need for a community resource center that provides coordinated services, navigation, and safe daytime engagement. The Rock answers that need. Too often, we talk about homelessness as if one program will solve it. The evidence shows otherwise, as has been discussed tonight and very well said by Councilor Barrett. Effective communities invest across the entire continuum, from outreach and shelter to day services, housing navigation, permanent housing. And without those connections, people cycle between encampments, emergency rooms, living in their cars, detox facilities, and the criminal justice system. Those cycles are expensive, ineffective, and hard on everyone involved. The Rock is not a new idea. It is the implementation of priorities already identified by the provider community, already supported by private donors, and already aligned with the city's own homelessness plan, as we've been continuing to discuss tonight and previously. Please list the Rock on the ICIP and identify Interfaith as the community partner. Thank you very much for your time.
We'll move to Beverly Kellum.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm Beverly Kellum. I'm the Interim Executive Director for Interfaith Community Services. I know that you all know one of the big reasons I'm here this evening, but I would also really like to support the continuation of, any kind of programs for seniors falling into homelessness. Just today, we had a 79-year-old man who was living in a rental home. The owner decided to sell the home and he is now homeless, and even more tragically, has nowhere to go. There's no shelter right now. We are working with him to try to get him into one of the shelters, but it's tragic. And so I absolutely support adding seniors, which is probably the highest need population of all of the groups, to the pallet shelters and any other programs that we can continue for seniors. What I'd also like to say is, not only despite what happened to our beloved organization last July, but because of what happened, Interfaith Community Services has mobilized to create something that Santa Fe desperately needs: a place for people who have no home to be, both day and night, a place that gives them the resources and the opportunity to stabilize their lives and return to being productive members of our community. Like one of my former colleagues mentioned, in a recent letter emailed to Mayor Garcia and signed by 9 different homeless service organizations in our community, a permanent, adequately sized, low barrier homeless shelter with intensive wraparound services was mentioned time and time again as a huge gap in our community, as was a hub for coordinated care and co-located services. The Rock offers all of the above. We can tell story after story of people who say their lives were saved because of the services we and our community providers provided. We cannot give up on the people in this community who have suffered the trauma of homelessness, but we need the city to step up in as powerful a way as Interfaith has stepped up. Thank you so much.
We'll move to Stephanie Benenato.
Good evening, Stephanie Benenato. I have to just say that I was very surprised about what Elizabeth West just said. I didn't prompt her. I didn't know. I'm almost reluctant to say anything tonight, but I have some things I'd like to bring up. I understand you want to put banners up for International Film Festival, but we also have Route 66 banners, we have Veterans banners, and we still have La Fonda's banners from 4 years ago celebrating their 100th anniversary. So I wonder if these are sort of visual pollution. Do people really see them? And is the city going to be serious about taking down banners when they're supposed to? I know the veterans banners do come down. In terms of the study about the your staff or the council, I was actually surprised that it was so conservative and just said, hey, let's have a coordinator. And I think that's a good first step, because until the Charter Review Commission comes back and recommends changes, there may be significant differences in how the city operates under a strong mayor model. And to start staffing without knowing what that is, I think is putting the cart before the horse. And just because you allocated or reserved money for more positions doesn't mean it needs to be spent. And then security. I see security people that the city hires walking around downtown. I don't find them to be effective. They may be effective at a particular place like a library or city hall as a deterrent, but they're not really effective in the downtown area, just walking around sort of aimlessly. And then the other thing is, I was kind of offended by one city councilor who wanted to tie safe parking to her support of increased lifeguards at Fort Marcy. I think they are two very separate issues, and they should not be combined. And again, I appreciate that Fort Marcy is open a couple of afternoons, but I hope that Perez will open. I understand it's a couple $100,000. You're throwing around a lot of money, millions of dollars tonight, and it seems like you can come up with a couple $100.
Stephanie, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, there are no other hands raised in the Zoom room.
Okay. With that, let's resume order of business, please.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 10C. This is a request for approval of dates for governing body study sessions for the remainder of the year. And if the governing body study session dates are approved, consideration of approving the amended 2026 governing body and council committee calendar to include the governing body study session dates. And here to answer questions is Deputy City Manager Andrea Phillips and Legislative and Policy Innovation Manager Marcy Iannarino.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia, members of governing body. In your packet are a couple of options for schedules for study sessions. We've had some of you asking about when we could hold these, and so we wanted to just bring this for you all for a discussion. So there's a couple different calendars that we had put together, and really this is for you to decide what works for you. We have a host of topics that we could talk about in a study session. We also could do something where if there are business meeting or business items that need to move through on a committee that was scheduled for, whatever evening, you could go ahead and hold that short meeting and then adjourn and go into a study session, or even have a study session prior to the business meeting of the committee. So just with that, I was hoping that we might get some discussion going and some direction to staff so that we can prepare and get those scheduled for you.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Phillips. I'll turn it over to the governing body, Councillor Fagali.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy City Manager Phillips, for bringing this forward. I think many of us are very appreciative. I'm just going to say for my own personal life schedule, option one would work better for me, but I can do either and would be happy to do either. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other? Councillor Barrett?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to you guys too. I know you tried this before. This is round 2. I know it's going to go through this time. I know we're going to vote on it. I have faith in us to do this time, but I think it's really important because we're talking about all these issues, housing, unhoused, all these things. We need to be able to come together as a governing body for these study sessions. So that can drive our policy, that can drive our planning. So I'm really excited about this. I could go either way. I'll be flexible. But I hope we can vote on it tonight because I think it's super important. And thanks for all your work. And Councillor Castro too, for your work and giving up a meeting.
Councillor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of option 2. For my personal life, it helps because I have Tiny Human on Monday, so I like to not give up too many Mondays. But also, I mean, when we think about it from that standpoint, I think having all 3 committees impacted is just more equitable in terms of all of us, you know, having additional meetings in our schedule that we would not otherwise have, as well as each committee having an impact. So my vote would be to go with option 2. I imagine I can make option 1 work. I just may have a little shadow with me, but thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Fagali.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing. Deputy Director, when we had spoken, not at this meeting, the idea was that we would have it after the standing committee, like we would have a standing committee that maybe didn't have presentations or only took care of necessary business and then have that after. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councillor Fagali and Mayor Garcia, members of the governing body. I think the idea with this is, you know, whatever dates you all pick is just to provide some predictability for staff so that when Marcy and her team are working on scheduling legislation and those dates at, you know, which it would appear, we can understand what that looks like and plan accordingly for it. So I think you know, there is an opportunity if we know in advance, we could work with the chair of that committee to ensure that the business meeting, if there needs to be one, is short. Or alternatively, if, you know, you're working on something that would impact you know, public works or quality of life, for instance, maybe if the study session is on one of those nights, then the other committee could hear the item potentially if we need to move it through.
Councillor Castro. You can feel free. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. So I'm going to move based on this conversation to approve option 2.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Certainly, Mayor. Councillor Bustamante.
Yes.
Councillor Cassett.
Yes.
Councillor Castro.
Yes.
Councillor Fagali.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Barrett.
Yes.
Motion passed.
May I ask a
Job, guys.
clarifying question? I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Are we anticipating that this would be at 5 or 5:30, or were you looking to do an afternoon prior to a business meeting? Do you want to?
Councillor Bustamante.
Thank you, Mayor. It seems to me like if we have a very light schedule for whatever that meeting is, because I mean, a lot of these meetings do go by very quickly. I don't see a need to have to really come in earlier if we have that light schedule and we're just there to take care of essential business. It seems like, you know, we could do that the first 10, 15 minutes of the meeting and then move on into the study session. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Counselor Castro.
I do agree that we're trying to be efficient with our time. I realize it's summer and that we could potentially do some things a little bit earlier. I hesitate to make that decision without the rest of the governing body here. And because we normally do things in the evening, I would suggest that at least for the first one, maybe we can discuss it. We do it at 5 or 5:30.
Okay, great. So that would, if I can just, so that would be the next one coming up, first one coming up would be on July 1st. And just to confirm, that would be quality of life, short meeting potentially, and then the study sessions, that would be Wednesday, July 1st. And do you know yet what topic you might want to put on there? The reason I'm asking is just so that staff can be prepared and we can help facilitate a good conversation for you.
Well, we can't decide because can we take action, Marcos? Can we throw out suggestions? Can we do kind of an informal poll? Or can we make a formal recommendation?
This is a discussion item, so I think you can certainly discuss and propose things to staff that could bring it back to you, a finalized schedule based off of option 2.
Okay, so I guess the question is, I'm just going to say if somebody makes a motion and says, we want the first meeting to be on apples. I don't want to throw out any influence on any topics or any, that would be allowable. A motion can pass and we then give direction to the deputy city manager.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so I'll open it up. Councilor Cassett.
My vote would be housing. So I will make a motion and see how y'all feel about move for housing on July 1st.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion to have this first study session on the topic of housing. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Counselor Castro.
Yes.
Counselor Fagali.
Yes.
Counselor Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Barrett.
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante.
Yes.
Motion passed for housing as the first study session in July.
Okay, great. Okay, next item, please.
We are moving on to matters from the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a few things, announcement. I want to let the counselors know that, next Thursday, thanks to Elvin and all the team in HR, we're having a city health fair. I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. And then, Monday, June 5th, even though I'm not wearing that hat right now, we are doing a pushback for Engine 3. It was one of our capital outlay projects. I'm very proud of it. We'll be doing that on Monday at 10 o'clock at Station 3. So another brand new fire truck going into service and helping with the community. So with that, I have no further else for me. Thank you.
City manager, you said
Yes.
Monday, June 5th?
I'm sorry, June 15th. I
Thank
just saw
you.
the.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, June 15th.
Got it. That makes more sense.
Monday at 10.
We will move on to matters from the city attorney.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the governing body, I recommend that the governing body close the public session for an executive session consistent with the agenda as noticed in the agenda.
I would move that we enter into executive session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act and MSA 1978, Section 10-15-1, Subpart H7, a discussion subject to attorney-client privilege pertaining to threatened or pending litigation in which the public body is or may become a participant.
Very good.
So we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Or no, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Castro. Counselor Fagali.
Yes.
Counselor Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Barrett.
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante.
Yes.
Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, so we will stand adjourned and we will resume shortly.
Right. Okay, fabulous. So pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1J, I move that the governing body reconvene in open session and state for the record that the matters discussed in the closed session were limited to those specified in the motion for closure.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Fagali.
Yes.
Counselor Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Barrett.
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante.
Yes.
Bustamante, sorry. Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to matters from the city clerk. I do have an announcement. So I just wanted to let you all know and the public that in support of our department's integrated goal of increasing outreach to non-English speaking communities by 30%, our team, in collaboration with our contractor Langen, implemented Spanish language translation capabilities within the public dashboards report a problem feature. This enhancement allows Spanish-speaking residents to submit service requests entirely in Spanish, significantly improving accessibility and engagement with city services. Requests are routed directly to our bilingual staff, ensuring accurate communication, efficient resolution, and a more inclusive customer service experience. By removing language barriers, this initiative helps build trust, increase participation, and strengthen connections with our Spanish-speaking community. Also wanted to remind you all that there is the deadline for you to fill out the survey for the county and city joint meetings. So please remember to meet that deadline. We are hoping to be on track for a July 30th joint city and county meeting. And with that, that's all I have, Mayor. We'll move on to communications from the governing body.
Okay, I'll just start to my left. Councilor Bustamante.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple things. Just want to remind everybody, there's still time to register for the Next Generation Water Summit, which kicks off tomorrow. I recommend anybody who's interested in water, at least try to view something online. And then also this Friday, Councilor Barron and I are having our coffee with the counselor at Iconic, not Second Street, Iconic on Lena. And that'll be Friday at 10 a.m. and look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cassett.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I have is that tomorrow, the Santa Fe Little League will be having their closing ceremonies at Regal Park in the evening. I unfortunately won't be there, but my kiddos will be. And I just really want to congratulate the Santa Fe Little League on another wonderful season. It's just so much fun. There's always so many kids and families there. But also, kudos to the Parks Department, to the former District 2 counselors, and all the work that has gone into Regal Park, and the upgrading of those fields. They look wonderful. They're just such a benefit to the community. So I'm really glad that those investments have been made and they're working really well. So, and other than that, I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Garcia.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Barrett.
Yeah, just second what Councilor Bustamante said. Come join us, have a coffee with us. Doesn't matter what district you live in. We'll come say hi. Also, there's a World Cup watch party Friday at the Rail Yard. I think Economic Development's also a supporter of that event. It's Northern, I think Lenzik, but I think Santa Fe Economic Development. 7 o'clock on Friday. That's at the Rail Yard. And then La Tierra, you're a biker, on June 13th. That's a Saturday. It's for the BMX track. For Huijole Skill Park, right. So you can go pop a wheelie over there or just watch. And then I think that's it. Oh, we're also, Councilor Bustamante and I are working on like a family-friendly working group. This was initiated by the community, but we are planning a meetup at Regal Park on June 19th at 5. Bring your kids. It's going to be family friendly to talk about how to make Santa Fe a more family friendly place. And we'll have some like snacks for adults and kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Fagali.
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor Barrett took two of my items. Sorry, it's okay, Liz. It's okay. So yeah, Friday night, 7 o'clock, Rail Yard, there will be a soccer watch party for the first US game of the World Cup. Saturday at the La Tierra, there'll be a ribbon cutting for the new skills park. And then happy Pride, everyone. We have the flag up, and the parade is on the 27th, which I'll probably say again at our next meeting. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Counselor. One update, just folks, don't forget, first spray down of the year this Saturday, 11 a.m., Swan Park. Lots of kids participate, but that doesn't mean adults can't go and have fun under the fire hose as well. And then just a kind of brief historical lesson for folks. English was not the first language spoken in this area. Spanish was not the first language spoken in this area. So we need to be a embracing community and honor all languages that are spoken in our community. So with that, I hope to continue my learning lessons, and I apologize to my ancestors because my Spanish speaking skills are pretty poor lately. I need to beef them up. So that next agenda item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We're
Let's
moving.
hold on one second. Did Alma join us finally? Counselor. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to move on to item 16. This is introduction of legislation. 16A is consideration of bill number 2026-12 and adoption of an ordinance. This is sponsored by Councilor Paul Bustamante and Mayor Michael Garcia. It's a bill specifying that specific and limited fishing events on city-owned property in the Santa Fe municipal watershed may be approved by the governing body.
Councilor Bustamante.
Thank you, Mayor. This just kind of helps open the way for a possible fishing tournament for the kids in September. So looking forward to that, hopefully. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I think Councilor Bustamante covered it. I think it's no secret that we've had some challenges in ensuring that there's sufficient water flow to have a fishing derby during the month of June. And this is a tradition that we want to continue. And so we're just exploring options, how we can continue fishing derby tradition in the absence of water in the Santa Fe River. That next item, please.
Next item is consideration of a resolution. This is sponsored by Mayor Michael Garcia. It's a resolution adopting the City of Santa Fe's 2028-2032 Infrastructure Capital Improvements Plan.
Just a quick update on this one. This is a process that we typically would go through. We're taking a bit of a different approach this year, given that there was a law changed at the state level where any nonprofit would have to come to a municipality or county government to be included on their ICIP list to potentially qualify for state funding. And as exhibited by some of our commenters tonight during the public comment portion, organizations will have to be, and the approach I'm putting forth this go around is we as a governing body would have to include them as a governing body because again, this is a process where I believe right now we have 5 entities that would like to be included on our list. And so it will be up to the governing body how we move forward with those 5 requests. We'll have to move forward with an amendment of 1 or 5 of those requests and have them included. There is going to be a presentation from team member Sean Moody on the process during the Public Utilities and Quality of Life meeting that's coming up. And so that's just kind of gives you some foresight in how we're handling the ICIP process this go around. But that's next item, please.
Next item is consideration of a resolution. This is sponsored by Mayor Michael Garcia and Councillor Alma Castro. It's a resolution authorizing the annual installation of 25 banners from October 1 to November 1, commemorating the Santa Fe International Film Festival along the Guadalupe corridor.
I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's an opportunity to promote events that are happening within our community. So next item, please.
Next item is 18, public comment on bills. This is first public comment, no action. 18A is consideration of bill number 2026-11, adoption of an ordinance sponsored by Mayor Michael Garcia, Councillor Alma Castro, and Councillor Pilar Faulkner. It's a bill relating to the Santa Fe Homes Program and requirements for rental units, amending section 26-1.22 to make certain technical changes, to clarify the calculation of fees paid in lieu of providing on-site affordable units, to amend the fee in lieu calculation to use 30% of the area median income instead of 65% when determining base fee amount.
This is the first opportunity for the public to comment on this proposed bill. Is there any member of the audience that would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, is there any online, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
Stephanie Benenato.
Stephanie Benenato, I am pleased that you are considering changing the fee in lieu of. I have thought for a very long time that it is so low that developers would prefer it rather than actually providing affordable units. And I think it has to be come to be much closer to what a unit would cost in order to make it less attractive as the alternative to providing actual units. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
Mayor, there are no other hands raised in the Zoom room.
Okay, with that being said, let's go to move on to our next order of business.
Next item is 19. This is final action on legislation. This is a public hearing. 19A is consideration of bill number 2026-6 and adoption of an ordinance. This is sponsored by Mayor Michael Garcia, Councillor Pilar Faulkner, and Councillor Jamie Cassett. It's a bill approving the ground lease and development agreement of a city-owned building, the Midtown Visual Arts Center, with Midtown Arts and Design Alliance LLC. And here to present is Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency Deputy Director, Carly Venditti.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and what we'll do is we'll have a presentation from staff. We will then move on to public comment, and then we'll move on to comments or questions from the governing body. So with that, Kev, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councilors. What I will say is that this is an abridged version of a presentation you've already seen. So I have shortened it quite a bit just to make sure that we have enough time for any technical questions that do arise. Thank you so much, ITT. I figured it out today. You're on it as always, so I appreciate it. Moving right along, I want to recap that MATA and the city share a vision. When it comes to our shared vision, we all want to build an inclusive new city center to foster creativity, culture, and economic opportunity. As we touched on earlier today, it's really important that we continue to activate Midtown to get more eyes on those streets, no matter what condition they're in currently, because we will see more people joining our site soon. I really love having more neighbors and having more people to say hi to, not just the dogs that do indeed pass by my way when I'm walking around on lunch. So there's quite a bit of proposed programming of a value of $3.8 million annually, and that includes public partners that you heard from at the prior public hearing. This includes YouthWorks, who's here tonight, Make Santa Fe, SFAI, of course, as the original organization that created MATA as an LLC, just to name a couple. Moving right along, I want to really dig into the community benefits here today because we have a myriad of community benefits, economic, environmental, social equity benefits, and cultural benefits, all which were called upon by the community development plan, which this body adopted in 2023. So really quickly, high level, we're looking at financial sustainability with sliding scale lease rates ranging from $10 to $18 per square foot. We're looking at directly funding operational costs and debt service through this operational model, shared resources through collaborative adjacencies, right? As people collaborate and are established, whether those be organizations of fiscal sponsorship or existing nonprofits, they can share the burden, right? They can apply for grants in a joint way, as well as just share those operation costs so they're not covering those same overheads. As for environmental impact, of course, it's always a greener solution to pursue an adaptive reuse. In this case, we're not only renovating the Visual Arts Center, but there will be a transformational process undertaken for the historic barracks left from the Bruns Army Hospital. Moving on to social equity, we're empowering as a city, in this case, those organizations that are already doing vital work here in Santa Fe, right? The recommendation of approval tonight only supports their mission further. And finally, we have that cultural synergy. Like I said, we're supporting those organizations that have an impact across our age groups here in Santa Fe. Moving on, MATA understands what they're getting into with the Visual Arts Center. Not only have they done a lovely analysis on the condition that the Visual Arts Center is currently in, they have split this up into a palatable 3-piece process. That includes phase 1, that darker blue in the top right. Marion and Tipton, they require HVAC and some MEP updates, as well as, repairs to stucco, patching, making those vibrant colors pop again. Phase 2 includes Tishman, which is the larger portion of the Visual Arts Center. That's the more turquoise to the bottom right. And then, of course, phase 3 is the barracks remediation. This includes some site work, as well as some new construction and asbestos and lead remediation. Like I said, the existing conditions are known by MATA. They are aware that the Visual Arts Center requires floor placement of HVAC and plumbing, re-roofing, stucco repairs, some mold remediation in the case that there were some roof repairs required over the past couple of years. And then the barracks, being a historic structure, needs a bit more work than that. Looking at the total project costs broken down by phase, phase 1 is just over $7 million. Phase 2 is over $11 million. And phase 3, being the barracks, is over $9.5 million. Altogether, it's about $28 million. I won't make anybody do any math tonight. This includes hard and soft costs, from the renovation costs we've spoken about, solar panel installation, tenant improvements, to the soft costs of due diligence, project management, legal fees to get this sort of agreement up and going. We had quite a few meetings to complete it. Financing costs, capital reserves, and 3-year operating reserves with soft cost contingencies. Breaking down that phase 1 a little bit more for all of you. When we look at phase 1, that $7 million does include fundraising philanthropy, some of that which has already been received or promised in cases, $200,000 of that being state capital outlay, which we will be the fiscal agent that helps them work through that process. There would be a small low interest loan, and then they're also looking at some federal solar tax credits if they are still available. So sources committed to date include $3.5 million, and then there are some that are still in progress, because the critical mass that they will receive upon this potential approval tonight will also help them gain that support. So what is remained to fundraise is $2.6 million, and we do have faith as the MRA that they can pursue this, and they will go after it once we receive this critical mass. Once they do reach 100%, they may start construction on phase 1. So looking at their operating pro forma, their tenant rate and Tipton Hall facility rentals cover their operating costs and debt service. Like I said before, they're looking at $10 to $18 per square foot. These are sliding scale, meeting organizations in the community where they are at, right? Because some are in spaces that aren't at $18 a square foot. Some can afford that, and they will afford that. And that will help support those that are maybe under fiscal sponsorship at this time. In addition to these items, they have 3-year startup operating reserves, because they are aware that they are a young organization. So this has been demonstrated through our agreement. In addition, 15% operating cost contingencies include marketing costs for future tenants, and our assumptions in these cases include cost of living, annual rent, and operating cost escalations. Moving right along to the GLDA terms, I know I reviewed these during the first public hearing. However, the general terms show a 10-year term with the right to get another 10 years automatically. They can renew up to 3 additional times for a total of 50 years. Like I said, they have to have 100% financing prior to construction commencement At each applicable phase, community benefits are to include target lease goals of 75% nonprofits. And we say 75% nonprofits because there's also that balance of other organizations and consulting groups that these nonprofits need to even exist within the ecosystem, right? So we want to make sure that they're all adjacent as well, and that those that can't afford the, say, $18 a square foot rent are there and paying it. We have comprehensive default and remedy clauses, thanks to City Attorney Marcos Martinez, who helped me throughout this process. I'm forever grateful. Performance and maintenance standards, as well as some very specific terms about fixtures, furniture, and equipment. Anybody who's been in the Visual Arts Center knows that some of our fixtures, furniture, and equipment were specifically designed for this building. So, well, 3 buildings, excuse me. So those will be a part of those buildings in perpetuity, as well as insured as necessary. Throughout the process, they have to do a significant amount of notification and reporting to myself, which I could then report to you at any time. If you would like to request an annual report, we may. In the case of reporting, they have reporting on a quarterly basis during construction, annual reporting for the terms of leases, notification of subleases to the MRA, and then the notification of donor acknowledgement. Like I said, we have quite a few mutual protections. Those fall under our indemnity clauses as well as insurance requirements. The GLDA also requires compliance with the New Mexico Tort Claims Act if that were ever to be adjusted or graduate in rate. So the next steps, since I'm recommending approval this evening, include looking ahead at what their development schedule is. If approved this evening, there's a 45-day wait period for the effective date. And then they'll start moving through the administrative development plan approval process with land use, followed by their 100% financing and pursuit of building permits. We then hope that they will begin renovations in phase 1, Q1 of 2027. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Okay, not seeing anybody in chambers. How about online, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor, one hand is raised. Stephanie Benenato.
Okay. Ms. Benenato, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that this lease is comprehensive, or the agreement is comprehensive, that they're not asking the city for any funding, except that obviously the lease is what the city is providing, the ground lease, and that they're not going to start construction until they're fully funded, that there's all these protections for the city. Because again, when the university went in, Santa Fe University of Art and Design, suddenly the city was paying for an improved cafeteria that never was fully used. And there's still a lot of infrastructure costs, not necessarily just with these buildings, but on the campus itself. So I am happy to see that there will be this arts center, that they will be providing space for nonprofits, but that they're realistic in terms of financial responsibility and liability, etc. And so I hope that it will work out very well for everybody. Thank you.
Is there anybody else online, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, there is, Mayor. Cheryl Odom.
Ms. Odom, the floor is yours.
Okay, sorry, I'm looking at all these. I just want to say how thrilled I am that this is finally coming to pass. Years of work have gone into this by this group, and I just want to honor them for all of their hard work and making this building usable and wonderful again, and that the whole community is going to benefit from this. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Are there anybody?
No other hands are raised in the Zoom room, Mayor.
Okay. With that being said, I'll go ahead and turn to the governing body for any questions. Sure. Councilor Fagali.
Thank you, Mayor. I had many questions, but I spoke to Deputy Director Vendetti many times over the course of the last month since we got this document, and I am pleased to say that all of my questions have been answered, and I think this is going to be a really good project. So thank you for your work.
Any other questions? Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First go round, there was a lot of questions over funding, and I think that's the biggest issue. It seems like many of those have been resolved. In regards to the remaining funding, you said that you have faith that they are going to be able to come up with that. What's the pathway forward for that remaining funding that is not really being guaranteed at this point?
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia, in the case, they can pursue additional philanthropy as well as a low interest loan. They do have some interest and they have approached a lender. I can't exactly speak to what sort of rates they're looking at. However, in this case, they can always pursue the gap that way, and they do have debt service considered in their pro forma.
Thank you. And they do have the wherewithal to take on that debt.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia, that is correct.
Yeah, I see it as just a net positive for our community, including all the members that would be there. I do like the fact that we are retaining ownership of property. It is a lease. That has always been a positive and a plus on my side. I like the proposal. You have done a lot of work, so I do commend the group and you, Carly, for working this through. And so I stand in support. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just one quick comment. This is a great opportunity to demonstrate, 3P opportunity, public-private partnership. And so all the best. Should this pass? I don't want to get ahead of myself, so we still got to vote. So with that, being no other comments or questions, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
We need a motion, sir.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second now. Sorry, I was jumping way too ahead of myself. Now, any final discussion? Roll call vote, please, Madam City Clerk.
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Barrett,
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay. I know you're happy. I apologize, but I gotta say no cheering or booing are allowed in the audience. Next item, please.
Next item, 19B is on the agenda because it was originally noticed, but it is going to have the public hearing on June 24th. So we'll move on to 19C. This is consideration of a resolution. This is sponsored by Councilor Jamie Cassett, Councilor Amanda Chavez, and Mayor Michael Garcia. It's a resolution approving the adoption of the Santa Fe Midtown Metropolitan Redevelopment Area Plan. And I believe Carly, come back.
You're not done. You got one more item.
The Midtown Redevelopment Agency Department Deputy Director is here to present.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies, I had to get my other notes. Thank you again, Mayor. Thank you, councilors. I really appreciate the quick turnaround between my two items. So really quickly, this has been before the Metropolitan Redevelopment Commission, which recommended approval, as well as the Economic Development Advisory Committee, which also recommended approval. It was an honor presenting to those commissions, and I'm happy to present this evening as well. So there has been quite a concentration on the redevelopment of both the Midtown site as well as the commercial corridor for quite some time. This is the culmination of many planning efforts dating all the way back to 2009, St. Michael's Drive, Visions of the Future. I feel as though that does not get as much attention as the remake because it has a catchier name. But I really want to make sure that we take into account 2009. As a part of this process, we're on resolution 2 of 3, so more than halfway there. This evening, resolution 1 was the area designation to designate the Midtown Link corridor as the metropolitan redevelopment area, with the exception of a few pieces, which I will outline in the following slides. Right now, we're on the resolution which will hopefully adopt the metropolitan redevelopment plan as as recommended. And then resolution 3 is to implement a tax increment financing district. So the metropolitan redevelopment area designation required us to look at criteria from the state statute. We made a distinction whether those fell on the Midtown site proper or the larger commercial corridor. In this case, we looked at criteria as in defective or inadequate street layouts, deteriorated or deteriorating structures, environmental hazards, faulty lot layouts, high crime rates or public safety concerns, obsolete or impractical planning and platting. Like I said, we had to determine which were the applicable criteria. So in this plan, we could determine how we would change or stop the spread of these conditions. So this area was amended to include the Franklin Miles Park by then Councilor Garcia, now Mayor Garcia. And we also decided not to include the Tres Santos apartments because that would be considering those slum or blighted in their condition. And we did not want to name any residential property in that way without proper engagement from the community. So to paraphrase the intent of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan, it aligns with the vision of the redevelopment plans we've already pursued. They tie in almost like a nice piece of plywood. We have quite a few chips overlapping, but ultimately they're all a piece of the same board. We want to support the existing adjacent neighborhoods in this process while creating a vibrant community with a diversity of housing types and developing in a climate resilient manner. As part of this plan, we identified some of our national best practices that we could use as comps. In this case, tax increment financing districts are a common tool that help us not only accomplish redevelopment projects, but take on large infrastructure needs. So in the case of this plan, we called on a couple case studies, including Old Boise District, Village of Glenview in Glenview, Illinois. It was previously an old aircraft base for the Air Force that has been in redevelopment since 1995, most comparable to that of the Midtown redevelopment site. And the key takeaways from the 3 case studies included in the plan is that infrastructure is difficult to finance without a special tool or district. In this case, we're looking specifically at TIF, and TIF can be used to leverage or create a higher ROI on public investment. As part of this study, we put together a market study. Of course, we had 2 consultants, Plan being the main consultant with a sub-consultant, SB Friedman. SB Friedman put together Addendum B for the market study, and their conclusions and demand projections showed that we will be able to absorb the 1,100 units that are projected for the site. Of course, this will happen in phases. We've seen some of the ENAs come forward, and this governing body has approved them. In addition to these hundreds of homes, our market demonstrates an opportunity for additional research, light industrial, and lab space on the Midtown redevelopment site. It was also proposed that the campus have a conference or continuing education facility used for future large-scale events aimed towards professional development and conferences. So the recommendations and implementation of this plan includes 7 different goals here. And across these goals, we're looking at targeted interventions both on the Midtown site as well as throughout the dynamic commercial corridor. Goal 1 being about creating convenient connections, fostering high-quality built environments in phase 2, improving safety across the commercial corridor, addressing environmental challenges through resilient design strategies that have already been recommended in the redevelopment plans, establishing a better connected block layout with public spaces. Once again, just reiterating what our redevelopment plans have tasked us with accomplishing. Goal 6, including our expansion of housing variety and affordability across AMI. And then 7, of course, is about vibrancy and creative business activity. As I've kind of previewed, we are proposing the implementation of a tax increment financing district. This tax increment financing district could be overlaid across the entire commercial corridor, or it could be a district specifically on the Midtown redevelopment site. It ultimately depends on what sort of progress we make with our other counterparts, that being Santa Fe County and the New Mexico Tax and Revenue Department, in this pursuit of TIF enabling legislation, and whether or not they'll let us in on any of their increment. Substantial revenue from this TIF would be from these listed here: property tax base, GRT base, stabilized property tax annual growth rate, stabilized GRT, and new development. Of course, we have quite a few undeveloped parcels on the Midtown site that we are not seeing any benefit from at this time. So not only will we see increment from the improvement that being previously vacant land, will also see increment from GRT based on construction work and then continued property taxes in the long term. So moving on to the part of the conversation that may get a little bit murky, and I may call on City Attorney Marcos Martinez. As part of this plan and as part of this area, we look to establish authorities for the Metropolitan Redevelopment Commission. The commission would only have these authorities, and I may make the note that these are only the subtitles of those authorities. They will have these authorities under the state legislation only within this area as you have designated it. So in the future, if there is a new metropolitan redevelopment area designated, that new commission can propose altogether a different set of authorities as proposed under the state legislation. So not to name every single one here, but they have gone through these in a thoughtful manner with our city attorney, with Mayor Garcia, with myself, to identify what would be necessary to take to task these redevelopment plans as well as this metropolitan redevelopment plan. So keeping that in mind, I'd be happy to discuss any of these authorities in hypotheticals or detail, but I want to make sure that we know that these are only the subtitles and we get into deeper detail later on in the plan. With that note, our next steps include enacting tax increment financing through another resolution in the future if this plan is adopted as recommended tonight. Our next steps within that include updating TIF projections with a consultant. That would likely be a SB Friedman. We're working through a proposal with them right now, undergoing conversations with the Santa Fe County and New Mexico Tax and Revenue, as well as just enacting that TIF resolution with the percentage in which we want to divert GRT increment within this region or district, and then making sure that people are in compliance and they're filing under the right tax code. So I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Bendetti. Is there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Do not see anybody in chambers. How about anybody online, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor, one hand is raised. We'll go to Stephanie Benenato.
The floor is yours, Ms. Benenato.
Thank you. I just had some questions and raised some concerns. First of all, the 1,100 residences that are being proposed here, is that all on Midtown and not spread throughout the district? That's a question. I'm also concerned that surrounding residential areas would not be affected. You said you didn't include Dos Santos apartments, so they wouldn't be considered blighted. But what about the other residential areas? And it seems that you have to have a large corporation in order to benefit from this designation. And then the other concern is whether this body will come back to you to get actual approvals, or whether they have sort of unfettered discretion, because I think that was a problem with some of what happened earlier at Midtown, that the council felt that they were being left out of the decision-making process. And I think it's important for the citizens to think that the council would have some authority, some oversight on this, and not just have reports given to them and it's a sort of done deal. So those are some of my concerns that I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public online, Madam City Clerk?
No, there are not, Mayor.
Okay. I will now turn to the governing body. Any questions from the governing body? If not, what's the will of the body?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Barrett,
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Fagali,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, please.
Next item on the agenda is item 21, appointments. Veterans Advisory Board, Gary Donato, appointment as chair with the term ending May 2028. And Ari Jontry, appointment with a term ending May 2028.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Or none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Bustamante?
Yes.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Fagali?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Barrett?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Next item.
Next item is 21B, Santa Fe City and County Advisory Council on Food Policy. Eric Renaud, appointment as City of Santa Fe representative with a term ending March 2028.
Move to approve?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Fagali?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Barrett?
Yes.
Counselor Bustamante?
Yes.
Motion passed.
I believe that completes our agenda for tonight, so we stand adjourned.